revitalize the agriculture sector. And for this session, the session chair is Inshan Kanji, Expert Rural and Agriculture MSME Kanji Advisory. I would like to call you upon stage. Please come on stage. And the panelists are now here. Mr. Abdul Wakil, Head Credit, HBL Microfinance Bank. Head of Agriculture Finance Policy Division, State Bank of Pakistan, Nadeem Khanzada. Chief Strategy Officer at Kashaf Foundation, Zainab Saeed. Thank you. Head of FinTech, Fasal Pay, Fatima Group, Habib Saqib. General Manager of Syngenta Pakistan, Zishan Beg. और इस सेशन में हमें वर्चुअली कनेक्ट हमारे साथ होंगे लाइकुज़ ज़मान 1:30 PM के बाद. Thank you. ये सेशन की जो मियाद है, ड्यूरेशन है 50 मिनट्स है, तो 50 मिनट्स का ये सेशन है. आइए चलते हैं सेशन की जानिब. थैंक यू.
Thank you. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. So the way we structured this session is that we will start with a backdrop or the policy framework for agriculture and generally financial services. And then each panelist will have around 3 to 4 minutes to speak on the issues of the agriculture sector as they see it. And after that, we'll have a panel discussion on the strategies. And after that, we'll open up the panel for any questions from the audience. So just to give you a backdrop, because private sector operates within a certain policy framework, national context. And for that, it is important to understand, we also heard the speakers earlier today, that agriculture is an important sector. We all know the employment and the GDP contributions. But it is much more important than that, because it is the basis for successful economic transformation for any country. Whether you look at Europe in the 18th century, you look at Japan in the late 19th and early 20th century, you look at the Republic of Korea, or last but not the least, and most importantly, the fastest growing economy, which is China. Their reform started in 1979, and what Europe achieved in 200 years, they achieved in around 20 to 30 years. But they all started with agriculture sector. Without sustained long-term high growth of GDP of agriculture, it is not possible for any country to undertake economic transformation and move into a higher income GDP per capita country. So therefore, agriculture is a priority. It's a priority for the government of Pakistan. It is a major policy agenda. But agriculture growth should also be accompanied by certain other policy agendas, including food security, financial inclusion, women economic empowerment, and exports. Now, where is this growth going to come from? When we talk about agriculture growth, it's about, or the issues facing it. The main issue is the low productivity of the small farmer. Now, who is the smallholder farmer? The smallholder farmer is, the more conventional criteria that we have is 12.5 acres. But if you even look at 25 acres, 12.5 acres is an arbitrary number set by the British. So it's nothing that, there's no scientific rationale behind it. Now, the smallholder farmer is a huge market. From the private sector perspective, Agritech, there's a huge market. Less than 25 acres, there are 7.96 million farmers in Pakistan. Now, this is large in terms of the global context also. In terms of livestock, which is 60% of agri GDP, there are 7.5 million smallholder farmers. And when I say smallholder in terms of livestock, I mean less than 10 animals large and less than 15 small animals. So again, the numbers are huge. Now, the numbers are definitely huge, but what about the amounts involved? You look at agri GDP is around 12.7 trillion in Pakistan. Out of that, around 6.7 trillion is livestock. which is and this livestock includes meat, dairy, both subsectors. You look at crops, it is 4.7 trillion rupees, and the 5 major crops of Pakistan is around 2.7 trillion rupees. So this is the produce side. This is the GDP amount that we're talking about. If I shift gears and move more into financing related to technology, there is an estimated need, estimated by the cost of production of these 5 major crops, around 2.6 trillion rupees. 2.6 trillion is the need. Say 50% is the demand, 1.3 trillion. How much is being financed by the formal financial sector today? 2020, State Bank of Pakistan banking statistics. For 5 major crops, the financing is 215 billion, 215 arab rupees. The need is 2.6 trillion. Let's shave off 50%, 1.3 trillion, 215 billion disbursed, not outstanding, disbursed. So there is a market of 1.1 trillion rupees. So roughly around, $6.5 billion. Now that's a huge market for financing to come in. What is it going to substitute? Aarti, we heard about the Aarti. And we've heard that Aartis are exploitative and etc. But the fact is that the Aartis are supporting the agri sector today because of lack of intervention by the formal financial sector or deep penetration. So if you leave a gap, someone's going to come in. Any monopoly, anywhere in the world, any industry, the returns are going to be exorbitant. There is going to be exploitation. So there is a huge market out there for financing, and financing is one of the key factors for low productivity, other than the quality and the mix of inputs. Farmer knowledge, that's not there. Monitoring of the crops. So these are areas that need to be addressed through a bundled approach or approach in silos, but these are the inputs, financing, knowledge. These are the 3 areas that need to be worked on in Pakistan to increase the production of agriculture. Any value chain model, right now we all know the agri value chain model where the farmer takes suppliers credit from the Aartis and then repays in the form of the crop. So the crop is actually pre-sold. It is already sold. When the farmer is cultivating the crop, the farmer does not own that crop because that crop is owned by the middleman providing the suppliers credit already. So there is no way that you can actually do a downstream intervention without first doing an upstream intervention, such as warehouse receipt financing. So any value chain new model has to be lubricated with financing, and financing has to be accessible, it has to be affordable for the farmers. The second thing is, what the Aarti also plays a role is, the Aarti assumes the risks in agriculture. There are 2 main risks in agriculture. One is the commodity price risk, because we have the PMEX, but there is no hedging mechanism yet through the PMEX. And the second is weather risk. Now, here, for weather risk, we need to have, we've seen indemnity-based insurance not succeed as much as we would have liked it to. So the other product is the parametric insurance, whether it's area yield index insurance or weather index insurance. Both are being done globally. Both have their pros and cons. There is limitation to data there, but there are again private sector business models in India, for example, which provide weather information to insurance companies. So there has to be a starting point. I mean, some stakeholder has to take the initiative and develop the ecosystem for parametric insurance products. I also heard, I think it was Nadeem and Ghalib Saab mentioning that products have not been developed. That is an issue of the financial sector across Pakistan, whether it's commercial banking. I mean, product innovation has really not happened according to the local context. So that needs to be done. And also looking at the branch-based distributions. But if you look at, in a business sense, small ticket items do not have personal sales models. Only the large ticket sales have personal sales models. So there is a significant value that digital finance can play, and especially given the remoteness and the distances and the low population concentration of the rural areas, fintech is the way forward. So we will start our discussion. Abdul Wakil Saab from HBL Microfinance Bank. Can you please highlight some of the issues that you face in growing your business in the rural areas, especially livestock and crops? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to appreciate this session conducted by Pakistan FinTech Network and Pakistan Microfinance Network. The issues, as you mentioned, there are a lot of issues. We are doing business in rural areas, particularly for farmers, but our portfolio major contributed by agriculture sector, but we have a lot of issues in these sectors, particularly the weather condition. We don't have a certain type of insurances which guarantee us, and particularly as you mentioned, the weather index insurances are not available at the moment in Pakistan, which confirm the repayments, because financial institutions always look into the repayments. When we are extending loan, we check that the capacity and willingness, but both are available, but at what cost? Crop maturities are linked with the weather conditions. If the weather is well and the other factors which are beyond the control of human beings. So another factor in rural areas is lack of collateral, which is not available readily to the farmers, particularly small farmers, as you mentioned, which hold less than 5-acre land. They don't have a proper documentations for lending purposes. The another is the State Bank already given a credit guarantee scheme for marginalized farmers, which is a guarantee scheme, but it has a certain limitations. The overall value which is given to the banks are very small. And another is the loan amount. Loan amount is currently available up to 100,000, which is not sufficient to give a landholder up to 2 or 3 acres. So these are the main issues which we are facing currently in the financial sectors.
Thank you, Wakil Saab, for a good overview from the financial sector perspective and more conventional lending methodologies used. Nadeem Saab, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Inshan Saab. We are here to discuss how can we facilitate the farmers through different agritechs. So the farmers are facing multiple problems and challenges while they are developing their products. One of the major challenges is their availability of data, availability of information. If you look into the total scenario from the harvesting, from the pre-sowing to the harvesting, there are a number of challenges a farmer is facing. So here I would like to raise two major challenges. One is from the supply side challenge, and second is from the demand side challenge. In terms of agriculture, there are a number of challenges an investor or a policymaker is facing in terms of assessment of the market size. Currently, the market size which is available in our document, in our census, is 8.3 million farm households. Out of these 8 million farm households, 90% of the farmers are small farmers having land up to 12.5 acres. We have a meeting recently with the Punjab Land Record Authority, which is one of the leading institutions who has digitalized all land records. And as per their records, around 21 million land records of the farmers are digitalized at their end. So this is only one province for the Punjab. If you look into the other provinces and gather the information from other provinces, So you will be surprised that you have a large farmer base available, which is not recorded, not available with the stakeholders. Even they are not considered while developing the policies. So this is one of the challenge, that how can we develop policies until unless we don't have a database available, we don't have the information available, and the policy maker cannot develop a supportive policy for the banking sector or for other sectors as well. So this is one of the challenge, to develop a database model, a portal for the farmers that is available for the policymakers, for the investors to come in and develop their strategies accordingly. This is the one area that need to be addressed, and a very critical area, because without the database, nobody can assess the potential of the market. The second is, we are talking about the farmers. Farmers will opt different technologies. He will use soil testing, he will use sowing techniques, he will use hybrid seed, he will use high efficiency irrigation system, but these systems cannot be availed without the cost. And there are three questions I can raise here. Is there any capacity of the small farmers to go for availing this facility? Is the farmer can go for these technologies available at their rural areas? Has he capacity to buy these facilities? No. He has no capacity to buy. He has never seen any impact of these facilities on his crop. So these are the challenges a farmer is facing. So here we need to develop some sort of a different model, which is acceptable to the farmers. So I would suggest here, there is a need to a hybrid model which is available for the small farmers, because small farmers with the land holding of average 5 acres cannot avail these facilities at their farm while he is cultivating a small crop over there. So one of the challenge from the demand side, how can a small farmer get access to these hybrid technologies, agritechs, fintechs, and different innovative models to gear up their crops. So these are the two challenges that I think we should, or the forum has to address. Thank you.
Thank you, Nadeem Saab. Zainab.
Great, thank you, Inshan. तो challenges तो बहुत सारे हैं agri sector में, और बहुत सों की बात हुई, कुछ की आगे जाके होगी, but as a women-centric, mission-oriented microfinance institution which I belong to, which is Kash Foundation, हमारे लिए सबसे बड़ा challenge है कि जो पूरा agri की development हो रही है, agri के ऊपर investment हो रही है, agri पे काम हो रहा है, उसमें ख़वातीन missing हैं. जब आप लेबर फोर्स पार्टिसिपेशन को देखते हैं तो आप ये देखते हैं कि बहुत सारी ख़वातीन हैं जो लेबर फोर्स के अंदर एंटर की हैं. इनफैक्ट अ मेजॉरिटी ऑफ वुमेन दैट आर पार्ट ऑफ द लेबर फोर्स आर वर्किंग इन द एग्री सेक्टर. बट व्हाट हैज़ अनफॉर्चुनेटली हैपेंड इज दैट देयर हैज़ बीन अ फेमिनाइजेशन ऑफ वेज लेबर in the agriculture sector. So what is happening is that women are going and working at farms, but they are not earning money on it, or not earning enough money on it. So the challenge really is, how do we include more women so that women can actually earn money? And जो बात सुबह में नदीम साहब ही कह रहे थे कि एंड के ऊपर जो खातून फार्मर है या मर्द फार्मर है, उसके पास कितने पैसे बच रहे हैं, उसकी लाइफ में क्या चेंज आ रहा है, that is where we need to reorient and look at the sort of entire ecosystem with that lens. So हमने as Kash Foundation, when we wanted to go into the agri sector, as I mentioned, because we are women centric, हमने जब जाके research की तो सबसे बड़ा जो issue निकला वो ये था कि ख़वातीन के पास land है ही नहीं. Women do not own land. 93% of women in Pakistan do not own land. So जब आप एक means of production की बात करते हो, जब आप क्रेडिट की बात करते हैं और उससे एफिलिएटेड सारी चीज़ों की बात करते हैं, तो वहाँ पे ख़वातीन जो हैं मिस आउट हो जाती हैं. ख़वातीन को एक्सेस टू क्रेडिट नहीं मिलता, उनके पास लैंड ही नहीं है, उनके पास कोई कंट्रोल नहीं है मीन्स ऑफ प्रोडक्शन के ऊपर, उनके पास कोई डिसीजन मेकिंग पावर नहीं है. सो ये एक बहुत बड़ा चैलेंज है. इस चैलेंज को हम किस तरह एड्रेस कर रहे हैं? जब हम सुबह से बात कर रहे हैं और हमने देखा कि एग्री का एक बहुत मेजर पार्ट जो है वो लाइफ स्टॉक है. लाइफ स्टॉक में हमें ख़वातीन मिलती हैं. इनफैक्ट 70% ऑफ द इंटायर वर्क दैट इज़ डन इन लाइफ स्टॉक इज़ डन बाय women. So that is an area of interest if we want to work with women farmers and we want to kind of, mainstream them so that they can now also start doing other value chains. Other value chains including horticulture where there is a representation of women, vegetable farming where there's a representation of women. Then you look at the region, you see pulses and other growing that's done by women. So the issue really is, in a nutshell, for an institution that's trying to work in agri but has a women focus, is that women are missing from the agri interventions, women are missing from the face of agriculture, even though they are contributing the most amount of work in terms of wage labor. And we can talk more about it, but I think my time's up. So.
Thank you. Thank you, but women do operate in the 60% of agri GDP sector, right, livestock, so there is huge opportunity intersection. Habib Saab.
जी बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम इय्याका नअबुदु व इय्याका नस्तईन. I think you can't, you can not be in Islamabad and not be affected by, what has been happening over the past few days. I think मेरा perspective थोड़ा सा different है. हमें इन issues को dissect करना है in two different problems. Until and unless we look at these problems from the right perspective. So one is, like Nadeem Saab this morning mentioned, which is a smallholder farmer perspective. The other is from a country's, a Pakistani's perspective. So just to put some numbers, adding to what Raza Bakir earlier mentioned. We imported $8.3 billion worth of food last year. This fiscal year, the number is going to cross 10 billion. And this is a severely, or let's say significantly under-invoiced statistic. Our oil imports were about 23% of our total imports, and food imports were 14%. You consider oil being at, at its highest price levels over the last 10 years, and you give it a little bit of adjustment and add the under-invoicing factor into food, and you won't be surprised to see that actually food imports are our biggest imports. So when food imports are so high, it makes a lot of foreign exchange go out of the country. We are dependent on a number of factors like, the Russia-Ukraine war has exposed a lot of economies like us to food shortages and higher food prices and food inflation, which is affecting everybody. So one lens is the smallholder farmer lens, and the other is the yield lens. And if you look at it from the yield lens, the governor this morning mentioned that the world needs to double its production of food by 2050, so around 28 years. For Pakistan, because we're growing at almost twice, the rate of average population growth in the world, we need to double our production of our food crops in the next 15 years. We'll be 300 million strong by 2038. So these two things need to be looked. These are two different problems. They have different root causes, and they need different kinds of solutions. When we talk about smallholder farmers, they own, or I would say sustenance farmers, they own about 25% of your land. So these are the guys who are, probably in the lowest socioeconomic classes, are facing all the, challenges that have been discussed since this morning. Whereas the rest of the 75% area is owned by a relatively smaller number of farmers in terms of percentages, maybe 25% of the total population. So I would leave the decision to you guys. What would you prioritize? Would you work on these 25% of the farmers who own 75% of the land and have a much higher yield level and probably have a much higher potential to increase their yield, rather than focusing on the 25% farmers? Because if our yields do not increase, our food prices go up, our inflation, goes through the roof, our, current account deficit and all these key financial statistics show a very, very, scary picture, which affect not only the population in the rural area, but also the urban area. So I leave the decision to you. Now, when I look at these two from a from these two different lenses. One is a yield lens. So as a country, we significantly need to increase our yield. Then there are, 2 or 3 major problems. One, I think Inshan briefly mentioned, which is there are 3-4 key factors. One is quality and pricing of and applicability of the right input at the right time. Then there's lack of mechanization. And then the second big problem is the climate risk. Because climate risk affects both the small farmer and the large farmer pretty much the same way. Although there is more financial resilience within the relatively large farm holding communities as compared to smallholders, but in terms of yield, it pretty much affects them the same way. Now, if you look at some of the harrowing statistics of climate change over the last 30 years, almost 30 years, between 1980 to 2017, these were the statistics available. The number of heat wave days have increased by 31. So there are 31 more days in a year now where our crops are under severe stress because of heat waves. In our coastal areas and areas which are rain-fed, the rain has reduced by 10 to 15%. These are major challenges. But within these challenges lie a lot of opportunities as well. If there is a concerted effort, focused on that. We need to come up with new or newly defined agroecological zones. So if in one area temperatures have crossed a certain limit, perhaps a different type of seed of that same crop, the hybrid seed, needs to be adopted, or you need to completely change the cropping pattern in that area. And that requires, and perhaps we can talk about it later, a concerted effort of all the stakeholders together. When it comes to smallholder farmers who we really want to work with and improve their ROI or financial yield rather than just the crop yield, I think it's important to create some kind of hybrid cooperatives or farmer produce organizations. I read this quote somewhere that all businesses are formed on either one of the two principles. You buy in bulk, you process it, you sell in bulk. Or you buy in bulk, you process it, and you sell it in retail. That's the only way to make money for all the businesses in the world. The smallholder farmers buys in retail, sells in bulk, and pays the rent on both ways. So these are some of the key challenges, and I think these are the two different lenses that we need to use in order to dissect the issues with our agriculture sector and then try to find the right ways to fix those.
Thank you, Habib Saab, for your perspective, and we will debate this perspective as we move along the discussion. Zishan
Thank
Saab,
you, Ji.
please.
Thank you very much. So first of all, thank you very much for the session. I think the fact that all of us are here together clearly shows that agriculture sector mein there's a disruption that is going to come. And clearly, I think if you talked about the way population is growing as well, next 10, 15 years mein we will have global food shortage, right? So this is something really, really critical. So for sure, nobody can ignore importance of agriculture, not only in Pakistan, but globally as well. But more so, there's a lot of disruption that is coming into the sector because of the demographics that's happening. Now, coming to the issues that we're all talking about, I would categorize these two issues into broadly two topics. Pehle ko I would say, and baki jitni bhi discussion hai na, these are all, in my view, causes of those two issues. So the first one issue is, I would call it techno-economic sort of issues, which basically means poor living condition of our farmers. So चाहे हमारे जितने भी grassroots level पे जितने भी छोटे farmers हैं, their economic condition is extremely bad. And secondly, I would say capability building issues, right? So capability building issues, by that I mean, if you talk about agriculture, Pakistan में कितने ही agriculture R&D centers हैं, right? Barely. 16 बड़ी agriculture universities हैं. What kind of talent, कितना talent ये produce कर सकती हैं? You're talking about a sector which contributes to almost 20% of GDP, right? So these 16 universities cannot do justice. So ये capability issues भी इधर आते हैं, and then of course R&D side as well. So I'll talk about दोनों के बारे में briefly. I'll talk about those जो पहले वाला है, जो मैंने कहा techno-economic challenges. That is primarily arising because जो हमारे growers हैं, जैसा मैंने बताया, उनकी living conditions are really poor. So what happens is अगर ग्रोअर की लिविंग कंडीशन बुरी है, एक तो नंबर वन उसके पास फाइनेंशियल एक्सेस नहीं है इसका क्लियरली, मतलब राइट, एंड दे हैव टू काउंट ऑन लॉट ऑफ डेट्स फ्रॉम मिडिल मैन एज वेल, बिकॉज अगेन टू योर पॉइंट फॉर्मल सेक्टर इस साइड पे आया ही नहीं है. सो व्हाट एंड्स अप हैपनिंग इज वो पुअर क्वालिटी सीड लेंगे, सीड्स के ऊपर कॉम्प्रोमाइज़ होंगे, they will go for low quality pesticides, and that is one of the biggest challenges in Pakistan as well. They will do every single thing that will allow them to cut corners in terms of saving money, right? So obviously the kind of yield that will come out is going to be really low. Just to give you an example, sugarcane की बात करें तो पाकिस्तान में our average yield is around 65,000 kgs per hectare. India, which is considered really poor yield-wise globally, has 85,000 kgs per hectare. So that's huge difference, right? China की बात करें तो चाइना में तो कुछ crops में, for example, wheat में almost 3x का difference है in terms of their yield output. So again, इसमें जब finance farmers की बात करते हैं, इनकी incomes बेहतर करनी है तो of course number one solutions ki, I think we'll talk about solutions in detail, but in my view this is the biggest challenge ke their economic conditions are extremely bad, and till now whatever solutions are available, to be honest, they're all very fragmented. Agriculture ka sector ka challenge hi hai, because I come from a different sector pehle. The day I joined agriculture, I realized there's a lot of fragmentation. बहुत सारे छोटे farmers हैं, and penetrating them is not easy unless you have a very strong presence on ground, and not a lot of startups or जो ecosystem के साथ players हैं, they don't have that, right? So this is one sector जहाँ पे disruption or sort of things will not only be solved by digital, but it has to be, we in Syngenta we call this concept phygital concept, जहाँ पे physical activity will merge with digital activities to create the impact. This is what will solve. एंड लास्टली जो मैंने प्रॉब्लम बात की थी कैपेबिलिटी बिल्डिंग की, सो R&D के ऊपर अगर आप देखें, सो कॉटन में सीड इज़ अ बिग प्रॉब्लम. आवर कॉटन प्रोडक्शन हैज़ एक्चुअली डिक्लाइंड, एंड कॉटन तो हमारी वो क्रॉप है जिसमें वी कंसिडर्ड लार्जेस्ट एक्सपोर्टर्स, राइट? सो दिस इज़ रियली स्केरी. अनलेस वी डोंट डू एनीथिंग ऑन सीड्स, इट्स नॉट गोइंग टू सॉल्व. सो R&D के ऊपर अ लॉट नीड्स टू बी स्पेंड, सीड टेक्नोलॉजी के ऊपर, फर्टिलाइजर पेस्टिसाइड टेक्नोलॉजीज़ के ऊपर. एंड सेकेंडली बिग प्रॉब्लम इज़ टैलेंट. Honestly, I don't think the best talent has been coming into the agriculture sector. It is not considered a very fancy sector, to be honest. Up recently, new people coming in, bringing in more talent as well. But clearly, something needs to be done in this capability building areas as well. To finally summarize, I think वही दो चीजें जैसा मैंने कही कि पहली problem in my view is poor economic condition of the farmers. The rest are all causes. Finances and all of those things. And second is the capability building, whether it's R&D or attracting the right talent in the sector in general. Thank you.
Thank you, Zishan. Those are very interesting points. And we'll come to the solutions part after this. Like, can you hear us? I think you can, but we can't. We can't hear you. Okay, thank you. Those were interesting points, and I think a number of these issues can be addressed through technology, and financing did come in the issues mentioned by a number of panelists. So, moving to the solution bit, I just wanted to put this out for the audience as well as the panelists. I mean, a couple of points that are related to digitization and the agri sector. One is farmer aggregation. So there are, farmer aggregation I know is a most debated topic in agriculture or farmer cooperatives or farmer groups. But if you look at again the global scenario, so there are, as Nadeem also mentioned, one, you can differentiate the countries or categorize the countries globally into three categories. One is the large average farm holding size, which is the US, Canada, Australia. In US, the average land holding is around 430 acres. 430 acres is the average land holding size. The population concentration is not as high. So there, what you need to go in with first is mechanization or increasing labor productivity, because they don't have people to use the land. Then the second is Europe, which is in the middle. The third, on the other extreme, are the East Asian and the South Asian countries. Japan, 1.1 hectares. China, around 1.2 hectares. Pakistan has an average size of 5 to 6 acres. So these countries have to have aggregation because one, there is high population concentration. Two, the unit of production, the average size of land is very small. So without aggregation, and as Ishan also mentioned, it is impossible to talk to 8.2 million farmers or 7.4 million farmers if you take the smaller ones. So there has to be some level of aggregation somehow to be able to. And no country has developed their agriculture sector without aggregation. You look at Japan, they have an extensive network of farmer cooperatives, which is federated right up to the national level and which is engaged in rice export. So right from production, the entire value chain is there in Japan. अब इसका जवाब मुझे यूजुअली मिलता है, नहीं वो जापानीज़ अलग है, हमारा कल्चर अलग है. तो हमारा चूँकि कल्चर यूनिक है 190 ममालिक में, लेकिन ये क्लोजेस्ट इज़ अमूल, राइट नेक्स्ट डोर, Gujarat. आप अमूल का, you all I'm sure know about Amul. So there is a way to address this. The issue that we have is that mistakes को हम assess नहीं करते हैं क्योंकि we are scared of being, the initiatives being labeled as failures. But the best way to learn is to do a post-mortem of what happened, what went wrong, and how can we address this rather than discarding the entire concept. The second is मैकेनाइजेशन. अगर आप पहले कर लेंगे तो आपकी रूरल पॉपुलेशन फारिग हो जाएगी एग्रीकल्चर से, आपकी इंडस्ट्रियल ग्रोथ रेट इतनी तेज़ नहीं है. दिस कैन क्रिएट अ प्रॉब्लम ऑफ अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट इन द कंट्री. सो कंट्रीज with small average land holding usually start with increasing the land productivity, which all these East Asian countries have done, and then move on to labor productivity. Land productivity भी automatically result करता है. The third is government transaction purchases digitization. So PASCO, PFD, Sindh, they all purchase wheat, and now TCP is going to get into purchasing a lint. So if they are going to do these government purchases, there is an opportunity for digitization, and when you do digitization of purchase of the produce, you can actually link financial services to that. So there can be a troika where the government, financing institution, the farmer can come into agreements. So how do you solve this problem? आपने mention किया वकील साहब, मैं आपने कहा lack of collateral है, high cost of lending है. What are the solution for this? And I think this is also related, Nadeem साहब जो आपने बात की थी, database नहीं है. What can technology do to address these related issues? And please, anyone else also, if you have something.
Microfinance Bank launched a loan origination system through which digitally lending process, कि हम लोन को किस तरीके से प्रोसेस करते हैं आपने ये जो टैबलेट्स के थ्रू. पहले क्या था, कन्वेंशनल मेथड में लोन एप्लीकेशन आती थी, जाती थी, और तकरीबन हफ्ता 10 दिन लगते थे, लोन मिलता था क्लाइंट फार्मर्स को. और उसका टाइम आपको पता है, एग्रीकल्चर में टाइम सेंसिटिव एक्टिविटी है एग्रीकल्चर. अब क्या है कि हमारी तकरीबन 65% की लगभग ब्रांचेस ऐसी हैं जो कि टैबलेट्स पे काम कर रही हैं, और वो विद इन 48 आवर 90% जो लोन अभी तक हमारे डिस्पर्स हुए हैं, विद इन 48 आवर्स डिस्पर्स हो रहे हैं एंड टू एंड, फ्रॉम लोन ओरिजिनेशन टू लोन डिसबर्समेंट टू फार्मर्स. और तमाम एक्टिविटी फील्ड में हो रही है।
मैं आपको ज़रा चैलेंज कर सकता हूँ।
जी
हाँ?
जी जी।
तो ये बड़ी अच्छी चीज़ है और ये बहुत सारे माइक्रो फाइनेंस सेक्टर के इदारे कर
और
रहे
इसके
हैं।
अंदर और इसके अंदर डाटा की इंटीग्रिटी, क्योंकि हम डायरेक्ट डाटा नादरा क्रेडिट ब्यूरो से रियल टाइम में फैच कर रहे हैं।
सर, ये आपकी कोलैटरल का मसला कैसे हल करेगा? और आपने जो इशू बताया हाई कॉस्ट ऑफ लेंडिंग, आपका बंदा तो फिर भी जा रहा है, उसके पास बैठ रहा है, उससे वो 25 सवाल कर रहा है जो उसके टैबलेट पे पहले पेपर पे होता था, अब वही 25 सवाल टैबलेट पे।
पहले इंफॉर्मेशन, अब ये था कि पहले इंफॉर्मेशन खुद से बनानी पड़ती थी, अब डाटा आपके पास आ रहा है थ्रू नादरा। एटलीस्ट क्लाइंट की जो एक रिकग्निशन जेन्युइननेस है या रिकग्निशन है, जो कि माइक्रो फाइनेंस का सबसे बड़ा प्रॉब्लम है, वो आपका एक किसी हद तक कर्टेल हो रहा है, रिजॉल्व हो रहा है। दूसरा है कि कोलैटरल, जब क्लाइंट और हमारा क्लाइंट की अब जियो टैगिंग भी हो रही है सिस्टम के अंदर, हमें पता है कि हमारा क्लाइंट किस वक्त कहाँ मौजूद है। अब आप जाएं, आज हमारे सिस्टम में जाएं, चेक करें कि हमारे जितने क्लाइंट आपको पॉपुलेटेड नज़र आएंगे कि इस एरिया में कितने क्लाइंट हैं, उनका पोर्टफोलियो कितना है, उनके पास आउटस्टैंडिंग अमाउंट क्या है, इंस्टॉलमेंट ड्यू कितनी है, या अगर वो लमसम अमाउंट है वो कितनी है।
तो नदीम साहब, ये सोल्यूशन काफ़ी है इतना दिस लेवल ऑफ डिजिटाइजेशन या इंगेजमेंट या कुछ और इसमें होना चाहिए?
सर, इसमें 2-3 बातें मैं बताना चाहूँगा जो बड़े इंपॉर्टेंट हैं। और जैसे NFIs की जब स्ट्रेटजी लॉन्च हुई थी, उसमें कई एक्शंस प्लान हुए थे, उसमें कुछ डिजिटलाइजेशन के हवाले से भी कुछ एक्टिविटीज़ एक्शंस थे, और उसमें एक नंबर ऑफ़ एक्टिविटीज़ थी। जहाँ अगर हम बात करते हैं डॉक्यूमेंटेशन के डिजिटलाइज के हवाले से, सिर्फ ये नहीं कि एक एंड पर आप उसको डिजिटलाइज कर रहे हैं, लेकिन उसके दूसरे एंड को भी हमें देखना पड़ेगा। अब इस वक्त पंजाब जिसमें पंजाब लैंड रिकॉर्ड अथॉरिटी जो है, उसके पास डिजिटलाइज लैंड रिकॉर्ड्स अवेलेबल हैं। और इस NFIs के अंडर में हमने क्या किया कि हमने तकरीबन 27 बैंक्स को हमने इंटीग्रेट कर दिया है पंजाब लैंड रिकॉर्ड अथॉरिटी के साथ। अब पंजाब लैंड रिकॉर्ड अथॉरिटी का वो डेटा जो उनके अराजी सेंटर पे अवेलेबल होता था, नाउ ऑल द बैंक्स कैन एक्सेस these database directly from their desktops, from their branches, from their outlets.
नदीम साहब, सॉरी, मैं आपको भी
Let me complete.
अच्छा, प्लीज गो अहेड।
अच्छा, ये डेटा अवेलेबल है, ज़ाहिर इसका भी पहला साल हुआ है, बिकॉज 2020 में जो हमने इनके साथ MOUs किए और उसके MOUs करने के बाद बैंकों को ये एक्सेस देना शुरू कर दी थी। लास्ट ईयर मैं आपको डेटा बताऊं, क्योंकि डेटा जो हम उनसे ले भी रहे होते हैं बैंकों से, और ये डेटा PLRA से भी ले रहे होते हैं क्रॉस चेक करने के लिए, तो अराउंड 100,000 प्लस क्लाइंट्स का डेटा बैंकों से डायरेक्टली एक्सेस हुआ है, वेरीफाई हुआ है, उसकी फ़र्द जनरेट हुई हैं, उसका चार्ज क्रिएट थ्रू बैंक के अपने चैनल से होना शुरू हो गया है। तो ये एक बहुत बड़ा एक ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन है, क्योंकि जो सबसे बड़ा चैलेंज पहले बैंकर्स को या फार्मर्स को होता था, वो रेवेन्यू डिपार्टमेंट के साथ ही होता था। जब भी हमने किसी फोरम पे भी बात की, तो यही फार्मर ने बात की कि हमें रेवेन्यू डिपार्टमेंट के साथ इशू होते हैं, हमें अपना रिकॉर्ड नहीं मिलता, हमें चार्ज क्रिएशन में इशूज़ हैं, वहाँ पर हमें ब्राइब्स देनी पड़ती हैं। अब ये डेटा और ये सारा एक्सेस डायरेक्टली बैंकों को अवेलेबल है। ऑफ कोर्स इसमें टाइम लगेगा, इसमें ग्रोथ भी आ रही है और इसके नंबर्स भी बढ़ रहे हैं। तो आप ये देखिएगा कि जब ये आस्ते आस्ते कवर होना शुरू हो जाएंगे, बैंक सारे इस सिस्टम को अडॉप्ट कर लेंगे, तो हमारी जितनी भी लैंडिंग है थ्रू डिजिटलाइज मीन, जो सबसे बड़ा इशू था कि हम डेटा को ट्रांसपेरेंट कैसे करें, डेटा को एक्सेस कैसे करें, अब वो उसके डेटाबेस उसके पास अवेलेबल है।
लेकिन ठीक है नदीम साहब, बिल्कुल, ये तो एक स्ट्रीम है लेंडिंग की, अगर मैं इसको देखूं कि ये वही लाइन है कि कोलैटरल बेस्ड लेंडिंग करनी।
जी हाँ,
राइट। ये यहाँ पे थोड़ा हम वी हैव टू, आई थिंक पर्सनली थिंक आउट ऑफ द बॉक्स। कोलैटरल बेस्ड लेंडिंग ही एक फॉर्म की लेंडिंग नहीं है दुनिया में, मतलब, और स्पेशली ये आप कह रहे हैं LRMIS में आ जाएंगे सारे, मेरे तजुर्बे में तो नहीं आएंगे, क्योंकि ये ज़मीन का ट्रांसफ़र ही नहीं करते टाइटल लोग, क्योंकि उनको भाई बहनों को देने पड़ जाते हैं इससे। तो दिस इज़ अ मेजर इशू जो हमारे इधर है। और दूसरी बात, कोलैटरल बेस्ड लेंडिंग ही रह गई है, मतलब
अब मैं दूसरे
और स्मॉल लेवल पे स्पेशली, मे बी फॉर 100 एकड़ वाले को लैंड करना है, 200 वाले को लैंड करना है, बड़ी अच्छा है, कोलैटरल बेस्ड करें। बट अगर आपने 2-4 लाख $5 लाख के लोन रुपए के लोन देने हैं, तो उसमें तो collateral based का मुझे नहीं समझ आता कि हम क्यों उसी को push कर रहे हैं, उसी lines पे जा रहे हैं, वो अच्छा जाएं, लेकिन there has to be something which I think जो fintech industry है वो भी address करनी
इसके लिए भी मैं आपको अपना एक पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू दूंगा, क्योंकि जिस तरह आपने बात की कि एक हमारा फार्मर सेगमेंट तो ऐसा है जो लैंड रिकॉर्ड रखता है, डेटा उसके पास अवेलेबल है, उसके पास डॉक्यूमेंट्स अवेलेबल है, वो लोन ले सकता है। लेकिन एक मेजोरिटी एक फार्मर्स की जो छोटे फार्मर्स हैं, जिस तरह हमने बताया कि अराउंड कोई 90% ऑफ द फार्मर्स आर स्मॉल फार्मर्स और कम्स अंडर द कैटेगरी ऑफ सब्सिस्टेंस फार्मर्स, वो कहाँ जाएंगे, वो कैसे फार्मर्स किससे फाइनेंसिंग लेंगे। अब हम जब बात कर रहे होते हैं मुख्तलिफ प्लेटफॉर्म पे कि हमारे फार्मर्स को लेटेस्ट टेक्नोलॉजी इस्तेमाल करनी चाहिए, वो सॉइल टेस्टिंग भी करवाएगा, वो इरिगेशन की फैसिलिटी भी लेगा, उसके पास हाई एफिशिएंसी इरिगेशन सिस्टम भी होने चाहिए, उसके पास पोस्ट हार्वेस्ट टेक्निक्स भी होनी चाहिए, उसके पास मैकेनाइजेशन भी होनी चाहिए। ये सारी टेक्नोलॉजी एक स्मॉल फार्मर्स के नॉट अवेल, क्योंकि उसके पास ना एक्सेस है, ना उसे मालूम है कि ये फैसिलिटीज़ कहाँ अवेलेबल हैं, ना उसने कभी ये देखा है कि इसका इम्पेक्ट मेरी क्रॉप पे क्या आएगा, ना उसके पास इतनी कॉस्ट है कि वो उसको बेयर कर सकेगा। अब इसके लिए क्या सोल्यूशन होना चाहिए, किस तरह हम इन फार्मर्स तक पहुंच सकते हैं? और इन माय ओपिनियन हमें एक डिफरेंट मॉडल की तरफ जाना चाहिए, जिसको हम कह सकते हैं सर्विस प्रोवाइडर मॉडल। क्योंकि एक सर्विस प्रोवाइडर मॉडल ही अपने एक अम्ब्रेला के तहत, अपने अम्ब्रेला के अंदर ये सारी सर्विसेज फार्मर को पहुंचा सकता है। कोई भी फार्मर डायरेक्टली डिफरेंट टेक्नोलॉजीज के पास नहीं जा सकता, ना ही इनपुट परचेज कर सकता है, ना ही टेक्निकल एडवाइजरी ले सकता है। तो देयर इज नीड टू बी some sort of a different model, which is a service provider model that can support farmers through these services. अगर ये आ जाता है, और ये आना अशद ज़रूरी भी है, क्योंकि इसके बगैर छोटा फार्मर टारगेट भी नहीं हो सकता, फैसिलिटेट भी नहीं हो सकता।
मैं उनको भी ले लूँ जी, आप बताएं कि ये solution for this.
जी, so I think करीम में मैं आई यूज्ड टू बी इन करीम बिफोर जॉइनिंग सिंजेंटा, सो उधर एक कॉन्सेप्ट होता था, हमारी प्रोडक्ट टीम बैठी होती थी दुबई में, एंड व्हेन दे यूज्ड टू कम अप विद अ प्रोडक्ट, वो मार्केट के इधर के कस्टमर्स को बिल्कुल मिसमैच हो रहा होता था। विद ऑल ड्यू रिस्पेक्ट, आई थिंक अ लॉट ऑफ दिस इज हैपनिंग राइट नाउ इन एग्रीकल्चर। सो व्हेन वी इंटरेक्ट टू ग्रोअर्स ऑन ग्राउंड, उनकी दो रिक्वायरमेंट्स हैं, उनको सूद नहीं चाहिए और उनको लैंडिंग की रिक्वायरमेंट है, एंड आरती प्लेज अ वेरी पिवटल रोल, बिकॉज आरती सिर्फ पैसे नहीं दे रहा, they're doing a lot of other things as well. वो उसको सीड्स भी प्रोक्योर करके दे रहा है, वो उसको पेस्टिसाइड्स भी करके दे रहा है, वो उसको मार्केट एक्सेस भी दे रहा है, राइट? सो एग्जैक्टली सेफ्टी नेट भी प्रोवाइड करता है, एंड सो दीज बैंक्स आर बेसिकली कम्पीटिंग विद आरती, राइट? सो इफ़ यू रियली वांट टू स्केल, एक तो नंबर वन पहली चीज़ ये है कि वी हैव टू गो टू ग्रोअर्स एंड रियली अंडरस्टैंड कि वो चाहते क्या हैं। दे डोंट ओनली वांट मनी, एंड अगर पैसे भी चाहिए, वो बेचारा कोलैटरल कहाँ से लेके आएगा? So the whole concept of lending against collateral is not really.
Banks तो कहते हैं collateral नहीं है तो मैं नहीं दे सकता।
Exactly.
या मुझे कोई गारंटी करे कि ये repayment आएगी।
Absolutely. So I think what needs to be done, right?
Exactly.
So इसमें one is government intervention, जिस तरह ये collateral के ऊपर e-ticketing वाला project है, that's really good. उसके अलावा multiple player needs to step in, and वो players जिनकी actually physical presence बहुत ज़्यादा है ground में, right? So they can actually face to face talk to growers and not only give them lending but बाकी चीजें भी options access to market भी दे
आपने बात की आरती की, वो रिस्क कौन लेगा जो आरती लेता है?
Absolutely, that's a big question.
वो वहीं पे तो बात आती है ना जो आप कह रहे थे in terms of collectivization and aggregation. So I think एक जो issue है जिसको हमें शुरू में address करना चाहिए, it has to be a multi-pronged approach. ये नहीं हो सकता कि सिर्फ collateral based lending हो, ये भी नहीं हो सकता कि सारी aggregation हो जाए। मुख्तलिफ फार्मर साइज़ को, मुख्तलिफ फार्मर टाइप को, मुख्तलिफ किस्म की इंटरवेंशन चाहिए। एग्रीगेशन इज़ समथिंग दैट विल वर्क फॉर द स्मॉल फार्मर्स, जैसे आपने भी बात की कि देयर टू डिस्टिंक्ट सेगमेंट्स इन द मार्केट, सो फॉर वन सेगमेंट वी नीड टू पुश अदर sort of incentives and other sort of products, and for the small segment farmer we need to do aggregation. अभी क्या हो रहा है कि हम ये बात कहते हैं कि रिसर्च एंड डेवलपमेंट नहीं हो रही, अच्छी नहीं हो रही, विच इज़ ट्रू, बट जो रिसर्च और डेवलपमेंट है वो भी नहीं अभी एम्प्लॉय हो रही, राइट? तो इट हैज़ टू बी फेस्ड। आप मार्केट को एंटर पहले करेंगे, आप मार्केट को थोड़ा सा समझेंगे और फिर आप उसकी एग्रीगेशन करेंगे, साथ में देयर आर अदर मार्केट प्लेयर्स, देयर आर अदर पीपल इन द मार्केट हु रिक्वायर डिफरेंट प्रोडक्ट्स। So aggregation is a very good sort of solution, and this aggregation is not just of the farmer. The kind of networks that we are trying to build through this conference. So there's aggregation of that also. what can I as a financial provider do better, and what can you as, a tech platform do better, and, what can policymakers do better, and, that has to be, be brought together. But for the landless and for the people who have small small acreage in terms of farming, land, aggregation, I think will really help. It also really, as you mentioned in Amul's case, has helped in India with dairy. So, despite the fact that there's so much dairy production, there's also, there's still potential for so much more. So if we can communalize, or we can put together, aggregate together women farmers, which is my area of interest, put together women farmers and, sort of aggregate them together, then we can do the backward forward linkages. We can train them, we can do the new research for, what they need to do, implement existing research, and basically have this, have this aggregation where, जैसे आप बात कर रहे थे कि retail models होते हैं, मतलब वो उसको फिर bulk में sell करें, value add के साथ sell करें, जो अभी नहीं हो रहा. So aggregation, I will, back that. It's very important, but it can't be the only thing. It has to be, आपकी collateral based lending भी होनी है, आपकी, हर segment के लिए फर्क होगा.
कोलैटरल बेस्ड लेंडिंग से जब तक नहीं हटेंगे तब तक ना स्मॉल ना एग्री इसको क्रैक कर सकेंगे मेरे हिसाब से. यू हैव टू मूव टू कैश फ्लो बेस्ड लेंडिंग. I don't know.
We are doing cash flow.
So cash flow
we are
में तो
doing it.
collateral ही
That's
है.
not better, but we are not, because agriculture sector is prone to risk every time. Sensitive है ना काफी मार्केट. बारिश हो गई ज़्यादा, फसल तबाह, नुकसान है. बारिश नहीं होती तब भी यील्ड नहीं आ रही. इश्यूज तो है, तो वो अपने आप को कहीं ना कहीं प्रोटेक्ट तो करना है उसने. अगर वो प्रोटेक्ट नहीं करेगा, अपने आप को कोलैटरलाइज के थ्रू नहीं सिक्योर करेगा, तो फिर वो
इसीलिए इंश्योरेंस बड़ा जरूरी है.
इंश्योरेंस की बात
जो लेंडर को, इन्वेस्टर को, ओनर को, तीनों को प्रोटेक्ट.
I think, sorry, just one last interesting thing is if you look at banks.
क्लाइंट अवेयरनेस ज़रूरी है. क्लाइंट अवेयरनेस, जहाँ फार्मर अवेयरनेस, और वो एग्रेसिवली तमाम स्टेक होल्डर्स को इसके ऊपर काम करना चाहिए. जहाँ नदीम साहब ने कहा है कि ड्रोन है, ड्रोन की कास्ट मुझे बड़ी हैरानगी हुई है कि वो 600 रुपीज़ पर एकड़ कास्ट आ रही है. किसी को पता ही नहीं है ये. मुझे आज पता चला कि 600 उसकी कास्ट है ड्रोन की, जो स्प्रे करता है क्लाइंट को विद बड़ी हाई टेक टेक्नोलॉजी है. अदरवाइज वो मेरे ख्याल में 6000 लगा देता होगा इसके ऊपर. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think one interesting thing for me, which is very surprising, is कि अगर एक high net worth individual आए, so next morning he'll get a lot of loans, right? But अगर एक farmer जाए तो the process is so complicated, and what banks are not realizing this is a game of scale, right? So probably at certain scale, the money that can be made even in lending from ये agriculture basis is much more than what you'd earn from high net individuals. So I think that taking that leap of faith, which a lot of banks are doing, is very, very important. And then again, collateral base ki bajaye in kind, a lot of experimentation. I think HBL is also doing that. They have started lending in kind as well, so against goods. So I think that's something that seems to be working well. And I think usme Saqib can also add if you want.
Yes, just 2 points. एक तो ये कि again, with all due respect to people from the banking industry, I've been to multiple conferences, and every time the RT is bashed, although smoking corners पे या side पे या चंद एक लोग realize करते हैं और बताते हैं कि actually RT is adding so much value. I started my journey in terms of Agritech back in 2016 when I started with the Telenor mobile agriculture team. And when we did the first level of research, one of the assumptions was that RT is evil. The outcome of the result was that RT is the messiah. So the farmers love RTs, and they say that, if this guy was not there, my life would be ruined. And then came a research by, I think CGAP sponsored a year-long research. It's called Financial Diaries. You can look it up on the internet. And they spent a year noting down every single rupee of money that went into a farming household and the money that they spent over the period of 12 months. So they ended up with 94 farming households, in 2 different South Punjab districts, and found that while the microfinance institutes at an average give loans at around 32 to 35%, the average interest charged by the RT is 60%, and the range is from 40 to 110%. So there is statistical data available that RT charges, a significant amount of interest. And we also know that farmers don't want to get into an interest-based lending. So as an industry, my question, to the banking industry is that what have they done to actually put up a counter narrative? When all these data, all these statistics are available, and we know that Aarti or the loan sharks charge a much higher rate than the banking industry, then what have we done so far? Perhaps, there is an opportunity that is there. I remember, I think about 20 years ago, there was a lot of negative sentiment about the packaged milk. And then the industry came together and they ran a lot of, campaigns to kind of change the narrative and thought process of the masses around that. So that's one. I think there's a huge opportunity because if you lend, there will be interest. And a lot of people have this, religious inclination that even they don't want to work with Islamic banking. One of the challenges that even, we are facing when it comes to making finance available to the farmers. The second part, Inshan, that you mentioned, and I think none of us touched upon that, was mechanization. So again, with respect, I completely disagree with you on that. Because we don't need mechanization because we have a labor problem. Sorry, because we want to increase labor productivity. We have other problems to solve because mechanization will improve yield, it would improve quality of the produce, and it would improve the quality of the products from farm to market. This heat wave thing, so I was talking to a few ginners, and they said one of the biggest reasons, which is least talked about when it comes to the issues faced by the cotton value chain, is that it is so hot and humid that it's extremely difficult to find the right workforce. And then when women, pluck the putty or cotton, the quality, index, it goes down on the quality index. So if you plant using, right type of mechanization, instead of, we've seen how paddy is planted or, even the traditional chatta method, all these are inefficient methods. So it helps. Secondly, on livestock, I think that's livestock is just, mentioned as a, what should I say, a sideline, that it has a much higher contribution. So there was a research done, I think 5-6 years ago. And in Pakistan, जो milking है वो हाथ से होती है. So it depends कि वो उस दिन उसका मूड कैसा है, बेगम से उसकी लड़ाई तो नहीं हुई भी या husband से, in case of women, उसकी सेहत कितनी अच्छी है, मौसम कैसा है, और जानवर कितने ज़्यादा हैं, availability of labor कितनी है. तो वो सिर्फ उतना ही दूध उसका मिल्क कर पाते हैं जितनी उसमें उस दिन ताकत होती है, एनर्जी होती है या मोटिवेशन होती है, जिसकी वजह, and if you don't milk the milking animal completely, its productivity goes down. And just by, adding facilities or making these automated milking parlors available, to a lot of farmers, if just at least 1 to 1.5 liters of milk production per large animal would be added, which has a direct, I think, $4.5 to $5 billion impact on our economy every year. So mechanization is extremely important. Again, the right mechanization in the right sectors, and then making it available to the people who need it the most. It is going to actually improve their, financial situation and the overall return on their investment.
Thank you, Habib. Very, very important points that you made. Zainab, you have a point to make, and then we'll open the floor for any questions from...
I just have 3 quick comments. Firstly, in terms of NPLs, ठीक है, agri sector के अगर आप microfinance के NPLs देखें थोड़े ज़्यादा हैं, but they're nowhere compared to the NPLs of commercial banking to the agri sector. So it is not, there is risk, आप सही कह रहे हैं, risk exist करता है, but उसको mitigate करने का भी तरीका है और वो बहुत high नहीं है. So microfinance institutions are working, banks are also working, वो एक फर्क segment के साथ काम करते हैं, वहाँ पे NPLs आते हैं. दूसरी चीज़, I also take exception to the fact कि हम ये कह रहे हैं कि जो clients हैं उनको interest नहीं pay करना या उनको interest bearing products नहीं चाहिए. हमारे पास 8.1 million इस वक्त customers हैं microfinance sector में, उनके लिए interest है important, लेकिन it is not the most important thing. सबसे पहले होता है timeliness, जिसकी बात हमारे colleague ने की HPL से, उसकी need को meet करे, उसका जो product size है, उसके product की timing, उसकी convenience, वो ज़्यादा important होते हैं. So I'll take, I wanted to put that out there, that it is not like when we meet women, farmers and other clients also, we have 8.1 million customers in the sector. We have 570,000 clients, and none of them say that the biggest issue that we have with microfinance or the issue that we have with microfinance is that their interest rates. So I mean, we need to move beyond that. ठीक है, there is going to be a segment that doesn't want interest rate. उसके लिए हम other instruments design कर लेते हैं. But like I said, हमें multitude के ऊपर काम करना है. हम ये नहीं कर सकते कि एक चीज़ करें और बाकियों को छोड़ दें. और तीसरी चीज़ mechanization की बहुत ज़रूरी है. और आपने बहुत अच्छी बात की कि mechanization ज़रूरी है, लेकिन एक inflection point होता है. एक certain point होता है जिसके ऊपर आपका size हो herd का, जिसके ऊपर milking machine काम करेगी, आपका size हो land का, जिसके ऊपर tractor काम करेगा. तो एग्रीगेशन फिर मैकेनाइजेशन को सपोर्ट भी कर सकती है. मैकेनाइजेशन का एक जो प्रॉब्लम हुआ है, जो रिलेटिवली लो लेवल्स ऑफ मैकेनाइजेशन पाकिस्तान में हैं, जो इस तरह लैंड प्रेपरेशन में अब यूज़ हो रही है, थ्रेशिंग में यूज़ हो रही है, वहाँ से ख़वातीन निकल गई हैं. तो क्या हो रहा है, क्योंकि ख़वातीन उनको नहीं चला सकती, मशीन्स को, ट्रैक्टर्स को भी ख़वातीन नहीं चलाती, तो ख़वातीन थोड़ी और हार्डर लेबर जॉब्स के अंदर जा रही हैं इन दी एग्री सेक्टर. इसको भी हमें देखने की ज़रूरत है. सो मैकेनाइजेशन का इम्पैक्ट हाँ यील्ड पर भी होता है, बट सोसाइटी पे उसका क्या इम्पैक्ट है वो भी देखने की ज़रूरत है. सॉरी, आई जस्ट नीडेड टू से दीज थिंग्स बिफोर वी.
Thank you for the input. Any questions from the audience? We have a few minutes before we end this session. We still have a few minutes before we end this session.
There's a question first.
ये मोहसिन देखें, ज़ैनब बड़ी स्टॉन्च डिफेंडर है माइक्रो फाइनेंस सेक्टर. गवर्नमेंट के पास इनको लेके जाइए.
हेलो जी, मेरा सवाल ये है कि अभी बड़ी एक इंटरेस्टिंग कमेंट था, आई थिंक काफ़ी वैल्यूएबल कमेंट है, कि जो 25% ऑफ द फार्मर्स हैं दे होल्ड 75% ऑफ द लैंड. So should we work with the smaller landholder, or should we work with the ones who hold the larger land? तो इसके ऊपर क्या पैनल का रिकमेंडेशन होंगी, क्योंकि मोस्ट ऑफ द टॉक इज़ ऑल अबाउट स्मॉल फार्मर, कि जी स्मॉल फार्मर उसकी इनकम बढ़नी चाहिए. एंड देन वी आल्सो टॉक अबाउट फूड सिक्योरिटी, देन वी आर आल्सो टॉकिंग अबाउट द पॉपुलेशन ग्रोथ. अगले इतने सालों में इतनी हो जाएगी, इतना output of produce भी बढ़नी चाहिए. So whom should we work with? Like, is it easier to work with the ones who are holding large farms, or should we target the small farmer? अभी यहाँ पे challenge ये भी आया कि जो small farmer है उसकी capacity to use the technique is difficult. So what should we do?
और आपका सवाल किसी specific panelist से है या
Whoever can answer.
Okay.
Let me take that. I think मेरा perspective ये था कि दोनों को different lenses से देखने की ज़रूरत है. And when you have limited resources and limited options, then you have to prioritize. Also, I think आपने बड़ी एक अच्छा point उसमें add किया कि उसकी capacity to change. So change hurts, change requires risk initially until and unless you get used to the new situation. So I think what we believe, or what I believe, and this is what we are going to do at Fasal Pay, which is the agri-fintech that we are forming at Fatma Group, is that we're going to work with the farmers who have land ownership between 10 to 50. We believe if this is the, there are about 725,000 farmers who lie in this area. So that's our first, target market. If we could create a success story in this target group, then it is going to influence both the farmers with more than 50 acres of land size holding and the smaller ones as well. So in order to improve the capacity to change for the smallholder farmers, you need to create success stories and influencers. So that's what I hope answers your question, that this is the sweet spot that we believe we should be working on.
Yes. In a nutshell, I don't think we need to choose. I think we need to work with both. So that's the approach that we need to have for everything. If we're looking at such a big sector and such a big issue and such underfunding, जैसे इंशान बात कर रहे थे, तो हमें दोनों चीज़ों को करने की ज़रूरत है. I don't think as a panel we even need to choose. There are companies that will crowd in towards the larger segment वाले farmers, and there are companies that will crowd into the smaller segment farmers. Sorry, Nadeem sir.
I wanted to comment as opposed to, if it's that, with your permission.
Please.
This argument, I believe, is the same argument that commercial banks had before the microfinance banks were introduced. That, we deal with the middle tier and the large tier, and it will flow down to the lower tier. It didn't happen. That's why, in my view, and we can have different views, we need to address not just the people who hold land, but the number of people who are holding land. Because if the lens is that we want to change the majority of the people's income, it's not going to flow from the people who are holding 10 and 50 acres, but the people who are holding less than 5 acres. But I agree, there are two solutions, not necessarily one at the expense of the other. But if resources are limited, my vote would be to go down to the bottom of the pyramid and start from that, because that's where you impact most people. The people who are 10 to 50 acres have more access to financial services, are relatively better off and have more access to information. But I mean, that's a view.
Yeah.
So
I think on this, I just want to add a couple of things, and I absolutely agree with Nadeem Saab on this as well. First of all, this 25% farmers creating 75% output absolutely varies from province to province. In Sindh, there are large land holdings. In Punjab, there are very high level of fragmentation. So one solution, of course, doesn't fit all. And for me, if you have to ask me personally, if you really want to improve the incomes of the growers and the farmers, at some point in time we'll have to scale. But to Habib's point, of course, we can always prioritize, start off with the bigger land holdings and then move on. But there's no way where we can really disrupt or improve things unless we reach the grassroots level and to the bottom of the pyramid as well. So eventually, whatever solution comes up with has to be scalable to a level where every grower sort of benefits from that. So that's my personal view.
The great disruption जो होनी है वो होनी small holder पे, क्योंकि वो तकरीबन कोई 7.9 million, 8 million के करीब 25 एकड़ के नीचे हैं, जिनके पास 66% of the farmland है, 2/3 of the farmland. उनकी प्रोडक्टिविटी भी कम है, तो वहाँ पे जो इनकम की भी फार्मर की बात कर रहे थे नदीम साहब पहले भी की है, वो सबसे ज़्यादा वैल्यू भी उधर है, इम्पैक्ट भी उधर है, पॉलिसी एजेंडा पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से, फार्मर पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से, एंड बिजनेस अपॉर्चुनिटी बिकॉज ऑफ द स्केल. There's someone back in.
Yeah, so my question is based on the premise of feudalism. As we're aware, in Pakistan, आज तक जो वडेरा शाही का निज़ाम है वो कायम है इस मुल्क में. Or we talked about big farmers and having control of the land and stuff. So we're at an Agritech conference, and I think this is the elephant in the room that we aren't really addressing. And I just want to ask the panel here, जो छोटा और बड़ा किसान है, वो अक्सर आरती के और आरती के, you know, he's like at the behest of the आरती. तो और अक्सर आरती जो होता है वो ज़मींदार का ही बंदा होता है. तो क्या ज़राअत का शोबा कामयाब हो सकता है लैंड रिफॉर्म के बगैर पाकिस्तान में? आई थिंक दिस इज़ अ पर्टिनेंट क्वेश्चन बिकॉज हम इंडिया का मॉडल सामने रखते हैं, बट वहाँ पर 1951 में ज़मींदारी एक्ट पास हो गया था. तो दे कुड एक्चुअली हैव द ग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन बिकॉज ऑफ द लैंड रिफॉर्म दैट दे पास्ड. So I just want to ask this question to the panel because this is a central issue to address if we are to take the right step in agriculture.
आप में से कोई अपना सियासी करियर शुरू करना चाहते हैं तो प्लीज.
फिलोसॉफिकली तो हो जानी चाहिए लैंड रिफॉर्म, होगी या नहीं होगी ये सवाल है. सो गिवन द सिचुएशन जिसमें हम हैं वहाँ पे क्या अप्रोचेस हो सकती हैं, हम उसकी इस वक्त ज़्यादा बात कर सकते हैं. बट हाँ, आइडियोलॉजिकली आई बिलीव होना चाहिए. आई एम श्योर हर एक की अपने आइडियोलॉजिकल बिलीव्स होंगे. आप सही कह रहे हैं, कंट्रीब्यूटिंग फैक्टर होता है लैंड रिफॉर्म, लेकिन ये नहीं कि लैंड रिफॉर्म नहीं होगा तो कुछ भी नहीं हो सकता. हम देख रहे हैं चीज़ें हो रही हैं, उनको हमें बेहतर करने की जरूरत है. दैट वुड बी माय आंसर. एंड पॉलिटिकल,
आई थिंक इसमें ये था कि जो लैंड रिफॉर्म्स ऑफ कोर्स आर वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट एंड इम्पैक्टफुल हो जाए तो बहुत अच्छी बात है. बट इन द स्टेजेस जब इंडिया वगैरह की आप बात करते हैं ना, उस वक्त टेक्नोलॉजी पेनिट्रेशन वाज नॉट दैट मच जब ये होना शुरू हुए, सो इम्पैक्ट मिला. बट नाउ आई थिंक अगर रिगार्डलेस लैंड रिफॉर्म्स हों या ना हो, द वे टेक्नोलॉजी इज पेनिट्रेटिंग, आपके स्मार्टफोन्स एंड 3G टेक्नोलॉजी, I think that itself can make a lot of impact in a positive manner for the growers.
जी, and I think problems को हमने दो lenses से जिस तरह सुबह से बात कर रहे हैं, एक ये कि yield के perspective से at a national level we need to increase our yield, reduce our imports, and the other is population welfare के perspective से कि हमने farmer का ROI बढ़ाना है. So इन दो चीज़ों के perspective से I think I'm not sure कि land reforms कितना ज़्यादा contribute कर सकते हैं, but rightly said by Zishan, there are now alternate solutions available. We are 50-60 years down the road, so yeah.
Gentleman in the check shirt, please.
Assalamu alaikum ji. My name is Awais Ijaz and I'm a data and AI architect by profession. So आप लोगों ने data की बात की कि there has to be a data bank जिसमें सारी information readily available हो to the farmers जो उनको help कर सके, right? So there are multiple solutions, definitely. Data exchange portals can be developed, right? But my question to you guys is कि who is going to be the custodian of that data and who is going to be the governing body of that data? For example, Monsanto या AWS या Azure type के data exchange portals where there are a lot of agricultural data sets which are there for the agricultural market of US or other developed countries, right? But Pakistan में governing body क्या होगी, custodian कौन होगा, ये कौन कर सकता है? Do you want the startups to come into that space and take the lead? Or is there any other regulatory body who can govern it?
Yeah, so I think on, sorry, you want to go ahead, please.
मैं आपको एक रिसेंट जो NFIS के अंदर हमने एक प्रोजेक्ट रखा हुआ था किसान डिजिटल पोर्टल। किसान डिजिटल पोर्टल को होस्ट किया गया था कि वो जो नेशनल आईटी बोर्ड है वो उसको होस्ट करेगा और जो प्रोविंशियल आईटी बोर्ड्स हैं वो उसको सप्लीमेंट करेंगे और उसको डेवलप करेंगे। तो इसमें टू स्टार्ट विद पंजाब ज़ाहिर काफ़ी एग्रेसिव भी था और उसने अपना एक पोर्टल डेवलप भी किया और उसमें ऑनबोर्डिंग भी कर दी, फार्मर्स ऑनबोर्ड होना शुरू हो गए उसमें और दे हैव क्वाइट ह्यूज अराउंड 800,000 जो फार्मर्स का डेटाबेस उन्होंने ऑनबोर्ड भी कर दिया। सिमिलरली अदर प्रोविंसेस हैज आल्सो स्टार्टेड ऑनबोर्डिंग द फार्मर्स, लेकिन कुछ प्रोविंसेस की तरफ से रेस्पॉन्स नहीं आया हमें। इनिशियली सिंध की तरफ से इसका पोर्टल के लिए इनिशियल स्टार्ट तो ले लिया था लेकिन उसकी ऑनबोर्डिंग शुरू नहीं की। इन द मीन टाइम जो गवर्नमेंट का एग्रीकल्चर ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन जो प्लान है वो कम्स अंडर कंसिडरेशन, उन्होंने शुरू किया और उन्होंने उस डेटा पोर्टल को यूज़ किया किसान कार्ड की सूरत में। रिसेंटली आपने देखा होगा कि चारों प्रोविंसेस ने, जिसमें पंजाब ने भी, KPK ने भी और सिंध ने भी और बलूचिस्तान ने भी, उन्होंने किसान डिजिटल कार्ड जो है वो इशू किया। उसमें HBL और दूसरे बैंक्स भी हैं जो उसको पार्टनर कर रहे हैं। तो वो डेटा बेस जो है उन्होंने उस किसान कार्ड को यूज़ करते हुए इशू किए हैं ताकि इनिशियली जो सब्सिडी है गवर्नमेंट की, जो फर्टिलाइज़र पे या सीड्स पे जो सब्सिडी है वो उसकी मद में उस कार्ड के थ्रू फार्मर को डिजिटली और उसको उस कार्ड के थ्रू मिलना शुरू हो जाए। अब इसकी अवेलेबिलिटी टू अदर स्टेक होल्डर्स, ये एक बड़ा एक सवालनामा है कि किस तरह ये सारा जो डेटाबेस है ये कंसोलिडेट हो NITB के पास और NITB सब्सक्राइब करे सारे स्टेक होल्डर्स को ताकि हर जो स्टेक होल्डर है इस डेटाबेस का बेनिफिट उठा सकें।
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm so sorry, but I'm under immense pressure to end this. Can we please take this offline after the? जिंदगी मौत का सवाल है तो करिए।
Assalamu alaikum. मेरा नाम मोहम्मद तलहा मसूद है. I came all the way from Abu Dhabi to attend this session. Regarding a question from Zishan on capacity building. Basically, you talked about capacity building. So my question from you is that what is the operating model you have in mind? Worldwide, education now comes to the doorstep of the student instead of people going to the university and education. So, post-COVID, this phenomena has come that learning management system come on board. उसके अंदर आप एजुकेशन को एट द डोर स्टेप पहुँचाते हैं, तो उस हवाले से आपके ज़हन में कोई ऑपरेटिंग मॉडल है जिसको आप रीच आउट कर सकें? मैं आपको अपना एक एक्सपीरियंस फ्रॉम आवर प्लेटफॉर्म देना चाहता हूँ कि वी आर वर्किंग फ्रॉम फैल्कन विजडम फाउंडेशन with Society of Human Empowerment and Rural Development. And we are bringing the education training courses all the way to the doorstep with the teacher with our learning management system. इस तरह का कोई operating model जिसमें आप farmers को educate कर सकें through at the village place or certain point of
You just want to know if there's a farmer model?
इसके हवाले से
I think इसमें detail पे हम we can talk.
Yeah,
There are a few things. I'm not an
कोई
expert
दूसरा session
in this, but I think in the interest of time, so I'll talk to you offline. on
Nadeem
this. There are
Saab from
certain
State Bank
models.
also has a comment. So thank you very much. Thank you all of you for your insightful comments. Thank you.
थैंक यू सो मच एवरीबॉडी। आप लोगों से गुजारिश है प्लीज़ आप लोग पिक्चर के लिए रुक जाइए जी। Thank you so much, Mr. Inshan Khanji, Mr. Abdul Wakil, Mr. Mohammad Nadeem, Ms. Zainab Saeed, Mr. Saqib, Habib Saqib and Mr. Zishan Beg. और इसी के साथ हम अपना नेक्स्ट सेशन जो है वो स्टार्ट करने लगे हैं। All right, the next session is about changing dynamics of agri-credit through digitization and innovation. And for this session is chaired by Kashif Thanvi virtually, General Manager and Head of Rural Banking at HBL, Usman Javed virtually, CEO Recult, Asif Riaz virtually, Group Head Retail and Priority Sectors Lending Bank of Punjab, Dr. Rashid Bajwa, CEO of NRSP, Tariq Mohar, CEO and co-founder Goldfin Private Limited. Nayab Jan, virtually Head Business Development and External Relations CIPE. Please come on stage. All right. इस सेशन में हमारे ज़्यादातर जो पार्टिसिपेंट्स हैं वो वर्चुअली कनेक्ट होंगे हमारे साथ, तो थोड़ा सा टाइम लगेगा, जस्ट 2 मिनट्स. तो जो यहाँ मौजूद हैं वो प्लीज़ स्टेज पर आ जाएं, और जो यहाँ पे नहीं है उनके लिए हम 1 से 2 मिनट इंतज़ार कर लेते हैं. थैंक यू.
Hello and Assalamu alaikum. I'm just checking if we are all there at the conference room. Can the PFN...
Yes, at least I can hear you, Kashif, loud and clear.
Perfect, Kashif, thank you. Oh, okay. So...
Yeah, I can also hear you, but I'm also not at the conference hall, so... Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Usman, and I can hear Asif as well. So we are in the same boat, the virtual boat. I'm not too sure if the physical boat can hear us or not, because I'm not getting any response from them right now.
Do you have their number or anything?
Let me just call the
number or anything.
ऑल राइट, मैं इस वक्त जो है सेशन जो है इस सेशन को चेयर कर रहे हैं वर्चुअली काशिफ थानवी साहब, जनरल मैनेजर एंड हेड ऑफ रूरल बैंकिंग एट HBL. ओवर टू यू सर. थैंक यू.
जी थैंक यू. पहले आप प्लीज ये कंफर्म कर लेंगे इफ वी आर ऑडिबल.
यस सर, यू आर.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum all. I welcome you to this session on the changing dynamics of agricultural credit and through digitization and innovation. I am Kashif Umar Thanvi from HBL. On the panel, we have the pleasure of having Usman Javed, CEO and co-founder Recult. Asif Riaz, and we've got Dr. Rashid Bajwa, CEO, National Rural Support Program, Tariq Mohar Sahab, CEO and co-founder Goldfin, and then we have got Nayab Jan, Head Business Development and External Relations, CSE Empowerment and Inclusion Program. I would also want to thank Pakistan FinTech Network and specifically Mr. Nadeem Hussain for initiating this much needed dialogue between different stakeholders for the common cause of empowering Pakistani farmers. Prior to initiating the discussion, of course, during the course of the day, there were very interesting discussions that took place. We would also want to put in a fact file in front of the audience. And this fact file is without any comments or captions so that we can have an unbiased and meaningful discussion here. So starting from slide number 2, if the coordinators from PFN can just go on to the slide number 2. I'll not go word by word because these are some facts which are mentioned there. So I'll just start with the fact that the era of Millennium Development Goals ended in 2015. And date of 2030, and there were 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Keeping in view Pakistan, which houses the 5th largest population, and more than 60% of Pakistani souls live in the rural areas, SDG number 1, which is zero no hunger, and SDG number 2, which is no poverty, they are absolutely and extremely relevant for the sake of this discussion. Because when we talk about agriculture, we are not talking about only the economic importance of this space, we are also talking about the poverty alleviation aspect. We are also talking about and alluding to what possibly can go wrong with the environment and so on and so forth. Now, again, I would request if we can move on to the next slide. These are just basic facts. So I think it's very important that I think we stop here in the slide that shows the GDP growth. I think that's a very important slide to put something in front of the audience. Thank you. So unless we start taking an action right now for agricultural sustainability, we will end up compromising on nutrition of our people, food security for the country, environment, and most importantly, millions of rural women and men who will not be able to earn a decent living. You know, need for food, feed, and fiber to support Pakistan's burgeoning population will only increase with time. And as somebody in the last panel discussion mentioned, that though the global population will hit 9 billion and the need for food will almost double by 2050, for Pakistan, it is not 2050, it is possibly 15 years from now. As you can see from this graph of the GDP growth in agriculture, Pakistan's agriculture GDP growth for the 40 years starting from 1960 till the year 2000 remained on an average 4%, which by any global standard is a very healthy growth. Now, of course, this growth came on the back of green revolution, high-yielding seed varieties, development of water reservoirs, first generation of mechanization, introduction of chemical fertilizers, and so on. However, unfortunately, if you look at the last 20 years, the growth has become anemic. And if we calculate the last decade average growth rate in agriculture, it is actually down to 2%. And most importantly, if we peel the onion and bifurcate crop and non-crop, we will come to know that the growth in the crop space is around 1%, whereby most of the growth has come from the non-crop sector in dairy and livestock. This clearly proves that we as a country and Pakistan's agriculture suffers both from random shocks as well as structural fault lines in agriculture. Now, be it lack of quality research, weak extension services, institutional credit outreach, exploitative markets, and the list goes here. Now, moving on to the next slide. I will not go into the detail because numerous panelists and Nadeem Hussain Saab and Dr. Bakir also alluded to these numbers. Now, the core message from this slide is that more than 90% of Pakistani farmers are subsistence landholders, which means that if we would want to have a holistic approach towards improving the lives of the farmers, we need to have a model whereby we handhold these farmers and improve their yield and productivity. In terms of land, they cover about 50% of Pakistan's arable land, but again, with 90% of these farmers, they are severely credit underserved. Moving on to the next slide, I think it is also important to understand where we are as a country in terms of credit penetration. So Pakistan's total advances of the banking industry are at 60 billion US dollars. This is the number I'm quoting of December 2021, a quite recent number. Now this comes to around 17% of GDP. Just to give you a perspective, total credit
Kashif Saab, we have lost you.
Well, it's a bit embarrassing.
Recording in progress.
Is hardly 3.7% of the total credit, whereas the contribution of agriculture is about 20%. This is extremely low because even in the developed world, for example, in a country like US, where the agriculture contribution is around 1% of the total GDP, the agriculture credit as a percent of total credit is more than 1%. Now this shows that there are serious structural gaps in the whole system. It is also evident that whatever we have been doing for the last many years, if we keep on doing the same thing, unfortunately, we will not end up in a good situation. And a broken system as inefficient as this is begging to be disrupted. And hence, we're talking today about agritechs, about technology, about collaboration, about what kind of paradigm needs to be brought in to improve the current state of affairs in agriculture, and more importantly, for the sake of this session, in agricultural credit. If we go on to the next slide, that is just a slide because as we have to ensure that we finish the session on time, audience members, we'll not go point by point into these slides. I'll directly go into the panel discussion, and to begin with, I think if I look at this, I would definitely want to get an insight from somebody whose company coined a phrase, "Those who feed us need us." Now that's a very, very huge statement, a very strong statement. So Usman, how has been the journey of Recult? What are your views about agri-tech globally in Pakistan, and what do you see coming? And I would also appreciate if you can highlight a few possible collaborations with the banking industry here. Over to you, Usman.
Yeah. Thank you, Kashif. If you actually becoming the cornerstone of a lot of organizations that are in South America, providing them with psychometric
Recording in progress.
in terms of reducing the cost to serve the farmers. What we have noticed while working in Pakistan, especially working at the forefront of lending, is that there's a huge disconnect between the financial industry, mainly the banks in Pakistan, and the needs of the farmers, that is the kind of product or the financial product that they need. That gap in itself actually is, I presume, one of the contributing reasons to what you shared in terms of the low penetration of agri loans in Pakistan. And I believe that unless we address this gap of what the farmer needs and what the financial institutions or the banks are providing, I don't think we'll be able to address this gap. Of course, there are lots of other issues also related to the same thing in terms of the bank's willingness to take additional risk the bank, in terms of priority, where does agriculture fall in the bank's overall strategy? Unfortunately, what I've noticed till now is that agriculture is at the lowest end of the priority when it comes to agriculture, when it comes to lending. And because maybe it's difficult, it requires a lot of intro in terms of what kind of products are needed. Maybe it's costly, I don't know. But what I have realized is that unless there's a major shift in terms of focus when it comes to prioritizing agricultural lending, I don't think so we'll be able to make much headway into increasing loans for Pakistani farmers. Now, coming to your last point regarding use cases, I think one of the biggest use case is to use technology not as a means to connect a farmer to a bank, but to provide them with a seamless process. And I know Nadeem Hussain Saab keeps on talking about this, and I couldn't agree with him anymore that making an app is not digitization. The best use case of technology is how do you provide this virtual world to your user, and in this case, it's the farmer, to allow him to use the facilities or the services of a bank without having to actually travel to the bank. And to me, that is the fundamental thing that we're trying to also address by building credit scores. And we can talk more about it, but I would focus more on this biggest use case, which is how technology can be used to replicate a banking experience without the farmer actually having to physically travel.
Very thoughtful, Usman. Thank you for the insights. I've taken some points from your feedback and from the discussion. But what I'll do is, because I understand that Mr. Asif Riaz has a meeting to attend at 3 p.m., so I'll just jump on to Asif, and then we'll get back after taking a round of the panel. So, Mr. Asif, BOP, Bank of Punjab, has been aggressively pursuing the cause of priority sector lending during the last 2.5 years. And more so, when we look at the agricultural book, there's a lot of resilience that we can witness by what initiatives Bank of Punjab is taking. Now, what is BOP's vision for agriculture, and how do you plan to leverage technology and Agritech here?
Thank you very much, Kashif, and thank you, the August panel. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a pleasure to be here at this forum with this great audience. Nadeem Hussain Saab, especially Rashid Bajwa Saab, and Javed Saab, Nayab Jan, and all other panelists. So, answering your question, Kashif, I think realizing the importance of priority sector, agriculture, housing, SMEs, BOP's management actually clubbed these all under one umbrella. And a new group was formed, which was called Retail Lending Group, and it was renamed as Retail and Priority Sectors Lending Group at BOP in 2020. These sectors hold an immense importance for the bank, and that is why a subcommittee of the board supervises bank's performance in all these key segments. So this is how the focus and the priority actually comes into place from the highest level, from the top till the down, till the bottom. So this is how actually the bank is actually focusing on. Agriculture financing is the heart of our business strategy. And our progress from the bank is seen from nowhere to the fourth position in the industry, and that in a record period of about 2 years. That is what I would say that the bank has actually progressed in the last 2 years. It's now trying to position itself to be amongst the top 3 banks in the next 2 to 3 years. Digitization, as you have pointed out, is the topic of the day, and is again a key pillar which the bank is can be seen in everything we intend to do. Be it tailor-made loan origination systems, e-tracking of facilities for customers, state-of-the-art internet banking tools, WhatsApp banking, and much more. So talking specifically about the agriculture and digitization, I would like to share some of the key steps that have contributed big time towards our success. Development, for first of these, the development of the in-house loan processing system, evaluation and the decision is taken through the digital process, and we have implemented this for one of our most successful programs, the Techno program. This starts from the online documentation collection portal, SMS alerts, and these are generated at the time of every stage the application moves. There are predefined feasibilities, customer evaluation through field visits and through recorded line Q&A sessions. We have expert scorecards, and that is how we try to remove the biasness. Decisions are made digitally and communicated through SMS as well as recorded lines. So this is a mix and match of the digital as well as the manual processes, but we are trying to keep it as much paperless as it is possible. We have developed specific need-based product programs to cater to everyday needs of the farmers. The product suite ranges from farm financing to non-farm financing sectors. We have one of the biggest clean loan portfolio in the industry, which is 2.7 billion, almost more than 300. Our average collection day for this portfolio is only 1 day. We are probably the only bank which has leased over 1,000 tractors in year 2021, and that too without any lien in the agriculture lands. We have now the 2 banks which has signed and made disbursements at electronic warehouse receipt financing. There are many revolutionary steps taken by fintechs in Pakistani market, and the biggest one being the end-to-end processing and disbursement of loans in customers' wallet. I believe for small agri loans, we all need to migrate from a conventional type of loan processing to the digital loan processing. Globally, we witness emerging agriculture technologies such as digital approvals on real-time basis, soil and water sensors, weather tracking, satellite imaging, pervasive automation, microchromosomal technology, RFID technologies, vertical farming. So it is quite evident that from the presence of Agritech in Pakistan, that these technologies are actually evolving and are being adopted in the local market as well. BOP is also transiting towards use of these technologies. Through collaboration with these companies, for example, we have signed up with GrowTech for water stress management, plant health analysis, management zoning, weather and AG commerce services services are being now offered to our customers as well. We are in dialogue with the Savvy Digital Advisory, Better, and these are actually our upcoming collaborations. We strongly feel that for such collaborations would actually improve agri credit quality and output by the agriculturist. You see, banks are very happy as long as these farmers are making good money, and of course that ensures repayments to the bank as well. But there is still a lot of room, and digitization in this sector shall soon be a major breakthrough, ensuring its tremendous growth. Bank of Punjab truly believes in digitizing the whole process. We are investing into this and trying to take this as we enter into 2021, as we enter into future. We are trying that our loan processing should be entirely shifted to loan origination system, and all the cases. I would also give you one example, although that is more related to the SMEs loans. We are about to launch digital side of the SAF, which is SME Asan Finance loans, for our SME customers, that would be a truly real-time SME loans approvals, and there would be a loan request would be immediately processed, approved, and dispersed in the client's account. So we also intend to replicate the same model for our agriculture customers. And I think a lot needs to be done. Whatever we have done, let it be electronic warehouse receipt financing, let it be area yield index insurance pilots, let it be Kisan card, which we are very closely working with the government of Punjab, which would actually digitalize the subsidy payments mechanism of the government of Punjab to all the farmers, the dealers, or the fertilizer dealers or pesticide dealers. But I think a lot more needs to be done to, that is how this transition is actually going through. And we want to be part of this journey, and we are investing big time to make it a really successful venture. Thank you, Kashyap.
Thank you very much, Asif. It's exciting and it's heartening to see Bank of Punjab, a commercial bank, moving aggressively and progressively in the priority sectors, and of course, for the sake of today's discussion, in agriculture, because as an industry, unfortunately, the industry has not moved in that direction. If we look into the industry, there are very few players who are actively pursuing the cause of farmer financing. Of course, sitting in HBL, I can safely say that HBL gives it a topmost priority. And when we see banks like Bank of Punjab growing aggressively in this front, it gives a very good feeling, because I think the space is too huge. We need more and more institutions to come into this space, to work into this space. And as Asif, you pointed out, I think the way going forward will be a combination of brick and click. And I understand that BOP's strategy will remain a combination of both, because you have a large branch network across Pakistan, and at the same time, the initiatives that you highlighted, I think they are, be it digital onboarding, be it expert scorecards, all of these are definitely tilted towards a futuristic approach. So without further ado, I understand you have a meeting to attend with the governor and his team. So thank you very much for your participation. And from here, I move on to other panelists. Thank you, Asif, for your participation.
Thank you.
Most welcome. Dr. Rashid Bajwa's name is synonymous with Pakistan's rural support programs and their last mile penetration. Dr. Saab, in your view, how can technology, big data, AI, and remote sensing impact business models? And what are the challenges that you foresee in collaborating with the new age agri-tech companies?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you very much, and must acknowledge the relationship that we had with some of our lenders, including Habib Bank, which were the first pioneered who really looked at the model and then decided to help us. And then, of course, Bank of Punjab and PMIC also. So all the key people are sitting here. I have some good news and some bad news. So I don't know how do we start. The good news is that there is a lot of agri-techs coming in, and that obviously increases the competition, and everybody is trying to look for some space in the agriculture field. So, but the bad news is that agri-tech is not a panacea. It's not something, it can help agriculture grow, and but it's not that any agri-tech will be able to solve the issues which we are confronting with. And the issues which we are confronting with has been just reported yesterday in Dawn. And if you happen to see that, it says that just from July to this month, Pakistan has imported $7.5 billion worth of foodstuffs. Now that includes, of course, the traditional ones, sugarcane, sugar and wheat and soya bean. But look at the others, pulses, dried fruits, even milk. So this is the state of the country,
And this obviously is creating trade deficits and issues of balance of payments, and our friends in State Bank are looking at it, of course, would be looking at it. So the question here is that, what is the answer? Agriculture credit itself is waning. It's on the decline. And the reason, of course, is that the share of agriculture in terms of the number of clients which are served, not the amount, has remained almost the same. In fact, it is declining. And microfinance sector at one point was the one which was trying to, prop it up by providing these small loans to, as we call the small farmers. Although as yet we have not been able to decide who a small farmer is. अभी ये नहीं पता कि definition क्या है small farmer की. कोई कहता है 5 एकड़, कोई कहता है, nobody knows about it, what is a small farmer. Unless and until we start from there to actually clearly know what a small farmer is, things are not going to work. And then of course there are landless farmers, which probably are about 60% of our agriculture labor force. These are hissedars, tekedars, you call them haris, whatever. That is also a big number. So the question here is that if agriculture credit is on the decline, and the reason perhaps is that when things were unsettling because of COVID and others, the government came in, the central bank came in, up to the SME level they were support. But somehow microfinance has been absolutely ignored. I don't know why it happened, and as a result you will see a lot of correction happening in the markets. There are going to be losses. Microfinance banks have been asked to increase, to put in additional equity into it. So there's a lot of disruption happening. So एक तरफ credit का ये हालात हैं, दूसरी तरफ आपकी जो yields हैं, yields को भी छोड़ा, जो demand of food and agriculture वो increase हो रही है, जिसकी वजह से ये Don जो कह रहा है कि probably we are going to end by about $9 billion worth of foodstuffs. This is a 53% increase year-on-year basis. So imagine करें, the exponential growth of demand of food, imported food, is happening because less is available in the country. Now, what is the answer? Is Aarti the answer? I don't think so. The Aarti is the answer. If Aarti was the answer, तो अब तक answer हो जाना था. Is Agritech the answer? I don't think so. As I explained, they are part of the solution, but they're not the entire solution itself. So रह जाता है, we have to see what we call out-of-the-box solutions. So what are the out-of-the-box solutions? And I would try to explain what NRSP, my organization, is trying to do in this field. And the out-of-the-box solution, ladies and gentlemen, is where you look at the entire agriculture value chain. So you dissect the problem into small agriculture value chains and see that this unit, for example, if it is a sugar mill, or if it is a textile mill, or if it is a rice mill, how many farmers are connected with it, and concentrate on that unit itself, and then do the backward integration. So if you want to see how it is being worked with us, I'll invite you all to come to Hafizabad. We have a living example. And that model, you can call it anything. You can call it a Aarti Plus model, you can call it a microcredit in-kind model, or a Theka model, or a Hissa model, whatever you call it. But the fact of the matter is that it works. The Ernst & Young were invited to do an interim evaluation. They found about 35% increase in incomes already within the last 3 years of these farmers. Apart from the yields, we have not yet looked at the yields. Now, in that model which I am trying to describe, you have what we call a farmer's owned value chain. Somebody earlier on in the earlier session talked about Amul in India. Amul India is actually a FOVEC, or a farmer's owned value chain model, where Amul is owned by nobody but the farmers, the participating farmers. So it's a large cooperative model which has been there. But obviously cooperative, name of the cooperative is a taboo at this stage, so you don't talk about it. We have added in this farmer's own value chain model, crop loan insurance under the area yield index-based insurance company. This was with the Paula advisors in Switzerland. We have also linked up with one Agritech, Bakhabar Kisan. Most of you know about it. So they're looking at it, the entire model. So what I'm saying is that you have to bring in, crowd in a lot of actors into one value chain. And then once you make the model successful, then you do the cookie cutter, you start multiplying the model. And this is probably going to have some impact on the agriculture productivity, farmers' incomes, and even create livelihoods for the farmers. Otherwise, the news which Don is saying is in front of you. I would earnestly request the government, particularly the Ministry of Food and Agriculture and the Central Bank, State Bank of Pakistan, to please kindly have a look at this model. But this is how it's going to work. बाकी जो कर्जे देने थे किसानों को वो अब ख़त्म हो जाएंगे. किसानों ने कर्जे वापस करने से इनकार कर दिया. उसकी वजह ये हुई है कि आपके पास मल्टीपल एक्टर्स आ गए हैं. एक ही किसान के पास एक इंस्टीट्यूशन के बजाय अब 3-3, 4-4 इंस्टीट्यूशंस के कर्जे हैं. वो अगर वापस करना चाहे भी तो वो नहीं कर सकते. So he has become over indebted. Unless and until the government comes in to help in some way, it is not going to happen. So the only option available is this farmers' own value chain models, which we with, of course, Vikas is sitting here. He's 49% shareholder of this model in Hafzabad, the Karandas. So together we are looking at it and we are trying to multiply this model into other agriculture products as well. But this is how this country is going to progress in agriculture. Otherwise, the good lands, if you happen to be around Lahore, you will find that the best lands of this country are being taken over by housing societies. So वैसे ही number of acres of land जो है ना पाकिस्तान में वो reduce हो रहा है. तो प्रोडक्टिविटी अगर बढ़ेगी नहीं तो वो तो और लैंड ग्रैबर्स आ जाएंगे. द लैंड विल बी फिनिश्ड. सो टू मी आई थिंक दिस हैज टू बी लुक्ड एट. दिस इज अ डिसरप्टिव मॉडल, एंड एज समबडी सेड अर्लियर ऑन दैट you need some disruptions in the agriculture sector. This perhaps to me is one disruption which can really bring in all the actors together. इसमें commercial banks with their credit programs आएंगे, इसमें investors आ सकते हैं, इसके अंदर वैल्यू चेन डेवलपमेंट के लोग आ सकते हैं. एज आई सेड, इंश्योरेंस कंपनीज, फिनटेक्स, एग्रीकल्चर फिनटेक्स, all will aggregate and come to a focal point to increase the productivity and the yields for the small farmers, to increase their incomes, and to give them the space which is needed for them to do this agriculture as an independent full-time activity. Abhi ye ho raha hai कि the farmer is doing it on a part-time basis because he can't make money out of it. So वो बस अपनी ज़मीन है, गंदम लगा ली, खा ली, and that's about all. So ladies and gentlemen, this is the point. Again, if you want to have a look at it, I'm available. The plant is there. Vikas Sahib and I, we can surely come and take you there and see and invite you to see for yourself what's happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Saab. Worrying and interesting insights, and at the same time, thank you for suggesting some practical solutions as well. Now, being the official timekeeper of this session, we have got another 10 minutes, and I would definitely want to make with two of our, and we would want to pick up on their wisdom. To begin with, Tariq Mohammed, say of commercial and sustainable microfinance in Pakistan. Tariq Sahab, with 90% of the farmers with land holding, which is called subsistence here, which is less than 12.5 acres by State Bank definition, how do you see the future of microfinance in Pakistan in the context of digitization? And also keeping in view your recent initiative, Goldfin. Now, we all understand that gold is highly underleveraged in our society. Now, how Goldfield initiative is relevant to unlocking gold as an asset class for agricultural finance?
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. And Kashif, can you listen me as well?
Now I can. I hope you were able to get the question that I asked, or should I repeat?
I got what you said. Thank you very much for the introduction and raising the emphasis of microfinance and later on the value of gold related to the agriculture as well. Before I come to this aspect, I think the previous panelist has very finely brought up major issues like probably agriculture has been at the lowest priority in terms of commercial. Then Aarti, which has given a great service to this sector for the last, I would say, more than 150 years, probably is now in conflict. And in conflict with the commercial side, which is being taken over by the banks. And then very nicely, Mr. Bajwa has brought up that probably the farmer is at a disadvantage. He doesn't get anything out of the business he's doing. Either he's under debt to the Aarti or he's in debt to the institution, which could be a bank, which could be NGO or anybody else, and he has not been able to create his personal capital. And when you don't have a personal capital, probably the future is not there. Credit was one option which could be recycled and create the right capital which is required for the family life of the farmer. And very rightly, one of the panelists brought out in the last discussion that women's participation in the agriculture is not fully recognized. I would say if the women was not participating, particularly to capital side of the farmer's life, by women rearing the animals, doing other transactions related to the milk, the dairy products they have within the families, I think the agriculture would have come to a standstill. So the saving part of the women today stands in terms of the most families, they're supporting their home income by the livestock. And there's a major contribution of the women. Then every family has some gold holding. Our assessment says that roughly low-income families of agriculture, then I'll define as Mr. Kashif said, that what's the impact of land holding less than 12.5 acre. Gold holding in areas of less than 12.5 acre is around 3 tolas per family. And that gives them a very ancestral capital, which is not created right by the generation which is holding it. By distribution, it has come down. The other aspect, blow up of population, that is one issue. On the agriculture side, our total is about 80 million hectares of land. Very limited effort is being made to expand this. The ratio is very limited. So this means this is a small kitty of land which is assessed to live with the population. You'll be amazed. This distribution of 12.5 acres was much earlier when population was less and land holding was generally between, let's say, 20 to 30 acres per family. But now with the distribution of land by the inheritance, the average holding now in the microfinance sector is 5 acres. Any family which has got 5 acres, bulk of their family members are in the cities doing the business, employment, and this is one of the reasons there is a huge urbanization. The urbanization is not a development of the urbanization extension itself, but it's the migration of the population from the agriculture sector. The second aspect is that people having more than 12 acres or 12 acres, I'm amazed this fact has not been brought forward. Their biggest issue today for a small farmer is they don't have labor. If you want, I give you a live example from one of my experience. Once we were camping with a huge potato field, and we found that the farmer was not showing interest to harvest that field The crop was ripe, but no effort. When we asked, we sat down with him, and he said that I don't have the labor, and if I call the labor, I can't afford it to harvest and bring this ready for the market. What he did was he plowed it back into the field and said it may raise my bio content of the soil. That is a reality. So this is what we understand when we say that the land distribution now we have out of the 8 million or more farmers we are in it, 90% are in the field of less than 12.5 acres. Their credit is a huge issue. And presently, their credit is provided to them by the Aartis. I said they are in conflict. Aarti has given his best. It is amazing. The formal credit in Pakistan for agriculture came somewhere in the 73. And that is the stage when it started developing. When we see the rate of evolution, then probably still the credit to agri remains in the range of 10 to 15%. And it will remain like that. So I think the biggest issue we have today in terms of the farmer is that they don't have their own capital. They are very on the low priority for credit. As regards the Agritech's contribution in this, I think it is a future, provided we can build up the database and move toward the commercialization of the small farmers. Now, this is something I want to present you a model that what could be the commercialization of the small farmers. In your life, just go and visit some village when the crop is harvested, particularly wheat and rice. The harvesting of a small, let's say 5 to 10 acres, just take 1 or 2 days. He has no storage. He is now at the mercy of the Aarti because he's the one who's the link chain to him in the market. So he gives his own dictates and he has no option to dispose at that price. The other aspect is that his overall price structure is also regulated by the government. So again, he operates in a very shallow structure where he can leverage his own self. The next aspect is that we had a very good discussion coming up on the warehouse. It will be very interesting to find out that warehouse is generally being activated by people holding more than 15 to 20 acres of land. There's no contribution of this. So in this commercial model, what has to come up is, one, we should create the credit system for the farmer where he can create his own storage. And he does not get impacted that since he has no storage after harvest, he has to throw his crop. So that can't happen. So that is the first problem where if he come up, it can give the commercial model. The credit can go to help in that. I'm not current of now, but about 6 years back, we did an exercise with one of the international investors as well. They were very interested to finance these small sheds to 5 and 6 acre holders to instantly store their crop. And at that time, the cost was coming about 100,000 plus to in a very fabricated case. Now it would be more. So that's the area. I don't give him the liberty. So that's the place where the main issue comes in. Now we come to the next aspect. He has less of labor. The farm holding is further going to decrease. Now he's giving on tilling basis to the vegetarians, to the vegetarian or even fruit production. I'll be, I think, very fair to say that the ratio of vegetable and fruit production is far less as compared than the crop. Now this is one area where Agritech can come in, because the market dynamics of vegetable and fruit is entirely different from grain. Grain needs immediate storage to let the price be stabilized, whereas the vegetable has to instantly move to the market, otherwise it has no value. So these are those conflicts which are now there in the market itself. How can they be resolved? I think that's a vast subject, I will not say, but one basic subject comes up, particularly relating to the agrotech as well, that your approach has to change in terms of specialization for now. The small farmers coming into agri side of the vegetable and fruits. And then the other into the crops, and you might divide that anything less than 15 acres is in this category and 5 acres in this category, and then move accordingly. Otherwise, again, our situation will remain clouded as it remained clouded with the state of the overall credit to the agri. So I think this clarity in terms of approach has to come up. Coming to the last aspect of the gold, I'll say one thing. We raised Goldfin with a big ambition in mind. The first aspect was that we will offer it to the commercial banks to improve as partners to build their balance sheet in terms of the secured product for agriculture and SME. And the second one was to make it more open and readily available for the microfinance agri sector, in which 5 acres to 15 acres where they can afford. And easily if they do, because they can now with the price of gold, they can get it, no collateral, as in the earlier discussion it came up that collateral was a major issue. But if you really dig down with the family holdings, you'll find gold with them. So this is a ready collateral which can be used to give them additional credit, whose terms of return are fairly comfortable. The markup is even 1/3 of what the Aarti is charging him. The return period can be year rolled over for 2 to 3 years. So there's a much more flexibility available in this. While he continues to work on his other options, gold now gives him a supplementary option, and particularly I like to say one aspect concerning the gender again on this, that women hold on the ornament in the family is a very strong structure. And there are some reservations of getting gold into the market as a collateral. If we go deeply, if a family survives, the women will also survive. And this is what I exactly said in the earlier portion, that the women had not taken the right action with their livestock. Most of the families would not have been able to survive, or would have declined to send their children to the urban areas for labor. So I think these are the areas where we need to focus. Just to sum up, create a commercial model for the small farmers, make credit more open to them, and for the storage purposes, if individually can't be given, there could be a cooperative storage in the village areas where farmer retains his independence to sell off his crop. All other crops are fairly independent to the farmer, but not the grain. So I think that's the area. And then where fintech can really come is specialized in respective areas and create the database. And once we have the database, it's going to be a huge opportunity. I think with this, I had constraints of time. Thank you.
Alexa, thank you very much for your unique perspective on gold, its collateralization. I think the point that you raised about labor shortage is something that is not talked about the way it should be talked about. And I think we cannot agree more on the fact that whatever model we implement, it has to be commercially viable and scalable. So with that, as all of us understand that we are really short on time and we have to finish this session in the next 3 to 4 minutes. So I move on to our last panelist, Nayab Jan. Nayab, your organization has been playing an active role in certain geographies of Pakistan, mostly in southern Punjab, I would say. So if you can highlight some of the important initiatives that you have taken in livestock value chain, coupled with your microfinance interventions, and how is your organization envisioning your interventions and their collaboration and dovetailing with Agritech? Over to you, Nayab.
Thank you so much. I'll keep it brief. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Just want to reiterate a couple of points. I think the first one is that was mentioned before, that nothing can really be scalable or nothing can really be viable unless and until there is a push from the state or the government, because we have to understand that other players, especially for us as, medium-sized enterprise, they are, after all, smaller players in the industry. So, like it was talked of before, that there are much larger dynamics with regards to the way land is divided in itself, and the way that land is productive or not productive. So I think unless and until there is a push and agriculture becomes a priority area, it's difficult for us to move forward collectively, because I think that if we want to achieve scale, there has to be a push. Secondly, I think with regards to your second question, I'll come to that first, which is about collaboration with different agri-tech companies. Now, whereas collaboration is something that's very, very important, and I think in the sort of digital ecosystem, in the agricultural ecosystem, multiple players have to. There are also certain barriers to collaboration. We welcome it very much, but what we've seen in the past is that, especially with regards to new microfinance providers, are the ones who, at the end of the day, are connected with the customer, have to also recover their loans. So there has to be, we are the ones who have to push for these changes. And when there is reluctance in the community to, take on board new technology, this is something that we saw my organization, CSC, and its sister organization, SEEP. We started a solar loan program, and it's something that, now, of course, the industry is also, I think it's something that has become a priority there as well. We saw that there was reluctance coming not just from the community, but from our own staff. And without the support of our investors, it was difficult for us to initially push these changes. So the same I foresee will happen, whether it comes to insurance for livestock, whether it comes to adopting technology, when it comes to different things that happen, information about crop yields, etc., things that are happening. So the technology, the people that we partner with on the technology side also have to, of course, take ownership of what is happening so that we can move forward together. And we have to have a customer-centric approach to it. We have to go to those communities. We have to sit with them. There are certain dynamics there. We have to convince them, because at the end of the day, the microfinance providers are the ones who are primarily in touch with the customers. And just to sort of come to a concluding note, I think it's very important. We are definitely willing to collaborate. And if there is a push from, the government, the state, and other players, this is where we come to testing different models, as it has been said before. And I want to talk about a particular model that CSC has tried in the past, because somebody already talked about the gender dynamics when it comes to agriculture. Now, whereas women are doing a lot of the labor on the fields, fortunate that their ownership of land and their decision-making power within what actually happens is lower. So if we're talking about disruption, I don't think the agricultural sector, a lot of the initiatives that are taking place right now are not really disrupting this digital gender divide that exists, and this gender divide that exists in terms of decision-making power when it comes to agriculture. So I just want to point out to one particular initiative that CSC undertook about 7 to 8 years ago, where we, with the help of support from EED, what the project was conceived as not just something that helps farmers, but it also helps women to uplift their position in certain areas. And this is a project that we undertook in Dera Ghazi Khan, where we gave out land to landless women, and we made them the owners of that land, and we gave them input for that land, and we gave them training. There was a lot that happened, of course. There was a lot that had to be done on the ground, and there were a lot of challenges that we faced because people that were leasing out their land were not willing to lend to women. So we had to have a lot of debates about why women have to be included in all of this, and it was in a way very, very groundbreaking for women to have their own land. And what we saw was that the results were absolutely fantastic. We saw that productivity increased, yield increased, and if we have continued support from the government or from other entities for us to test out and scale on such models, I think this is where change can actually come. So I really think, just to wrap up, that it is a priority. It has been a priority. But moving forward, it's important for the direction and the priority to be set from the government as well. And then for multiple players like ourselves to sit together with other players in the ecosystem and to, experiment with these different models, and models like ours, which we believe was a success, for us to integrate technology into that, for us to scale these up, and also end up changing the social and cultural dynamics and bringing those towards equality as well. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Maya, thank you very much. I really appreciate you highlighting the gender bit of it. And I think this is evident that if we as a country and in agriculture want to move forward, we have to make sure that 50% of us have to be productive, have to be empowered, have to be active. And I think there's a lot of stuff that needs to be that we need to do, especially in agriculture, because you highlighted about the ownership challenges, about the decision-making challenges, and these are real ground level facts, which we don't see otherwise in the numbers. And the DG Khan pilot that you highlighted, I think that's an interesting example that you gave. So thank you very much. Unfortunately, panelists and the audience, we have run short of time. I would just want to thank the sporty panelists. I will just name them again: Nayab Jan, Tariq Mohar Saab, Dr. Rashid Bajwa, Usman Javed, and Asif Riaz. They have immensely contributed to the discussion. I would just say that there are no right and easy answers to this discussion. However, a sincere, a concerted, and a thought-through effort and introspecting will help us to move forward and take agriculture forward and take agriculture finance forward. There is no denying the fact that Agritech, with the ever-increasing infrastructure in terms of data and connectivity, it is the way forward. As Dr. Rashid Bajwa rightly pointed out, there is no single piece which can be considered as a panacea. However, Agritech will remain an important enabler in terms of bringing in efficiency and in terms of bringing in more transparency and optimization to the piece in agriculture and agriculture finance. With these closing comments, I would just hand over the session back to PFN, Pakistan FinTech Network. And once again, on behalf of the panel, I would want to thank Pakistan FinTech Network and Mr. Nadeem Hussain for initiating this dialogue. And we hope that this dialogue will continue, because it cannot be solved in one discussion or two discussions. It has to be a continuous dialogue. Thank you very much, and thanks indeed.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. ये session end हो चुका है, और special thanks to Kashif Thanvi, session chaired. इसके साथ साथ उस्मान जावेद साहब, आसिफ रियाज साहब, Dr. Rashid Bajwa, Tariq Mohar, and Nayab Jan. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir. Well, now we have a fireside chat, and it is between, it's a fireside chat between session chaired by Waqasul Hassan, the CEO Karandaz, and Mr. Nadeem Hussain, Chairman Pakistan FinTech Network. Please come on stage.
जी थैंक यू वेरी मच अस्सलाम वालेकुम आप लोग सुबह से इस टॉपिक पे बात कर रहे होंगे मैं नदीम साहब के साथ बैठा हुआ था मैंने कहा कि कोशिश करते हैं कुछ डिफरेंटली बात करें स्मॉल फार्मर की बात करनी है उर्दू में देखते हैं ट्राई कर लेते हैं जब मुझे ये इनवाइट मिला आई थिंक कमरे में बहुत सारे लोग कम से कम मेरी निस्बत तो बहुत ज़्यादा नॉलेजेबल हैं I have at least one friend, Umair. I mean, I think he's also in the audience. He's an agriculture expert. Nadeem Saab knows this subject very, very well. Other practitioners are also sitting. एक चीज़ जो हमें तंग करती है हमेशा मेरा जो प्रोफेशन है वो बेसिकली डेवलपमेंट फाइनेंस प्लानिंग है हमेशा जो एक चीज़ हमें तंग करती है वो ये है कि पाकिस्तान की सोसाइटी में आप रेजिलियंस कैसे डेवलप कर सकते हैं मैं आपको एक चंद चीज़ों का जिक्र करूंगा जिस तरह डॉक्टर राशिद बाजवा ने भी किया IMF प्रोग्राम है इसका साइज अराउंड है $6 बिलियन जस्ट टू पुट इन द कॉन्टेक्स्ट कि आप हर साल जो पाम ऑयल और जो बाकी कुकिंग की जो चीज़ें मंगवाते हैं ये $3 बिलियन के पास है सो एवरी ईयर ऑन ईयर हम हाफ द साइज ऑफ IMF प्रोग्राम बीइंग एग्रीकल्चर कंट्री बाहर से इंपोर्ट कर रहे हैं और उस पर हमारी वो सीरियसनेस आपको नज़र नहीं आती जो आपको सीरियसनेस नज़र आती है ऐसे फॉर एग्जांपल इस तरह के की ज़रूरत है छोटे फार्मर तक पहुंचना मुश्किल है एक और प्रॉब्लम पाकिस्तान में कुछ एक्सपेरिमेंट्स हुए हैं जो कि और बाकी दुनिया में भी जो आप देखते हैं कि आपको एक एंकर एग्रीगेटर या एंकर स्पॉन्सर एग्जिस्ट नहीं करते हर कमोडिटी में समथिंग लाइक दैट जो कि बाजू साहब जिक्र किया करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं पाकिस्तान में पोटैटो के लिए पेप्सी ने किया है मेज़ के लिए रफान ने किया है ओलिव जो है वो चकवाल की वैली में हो रहा है लेकिन ये है कि कोई ऐसा एग्रीगेटर अभी तक इवॉल्व नहीं हुआ कि जो उसके प्रॉब्लम्स को सॉल्व करके फार्मर के साथ कनेक्ट कर सके और पूरी वैल्यू चेन को उस तरह से उसके मसलों को सॉल्व कर सके तीसरा प्रॉब्लम आई वुड से कि आप स्किल्स का जिसका डॉक्टर महार साहब ने भी जिक्र किया है कि पाकिस्तान में जो अवेलेबिलिटी है स्किल्ड फॉर्म लेबर की वो कम होती जा रही है और पहले भी जो थी उसकी क्वालिटी ये थी कि जिसको हम उर्दू में कहते हैं ना सीना गजट कि आपने वालिद से कुछ सीखा चचा से कुछ सीखा और वही चीज़ आगे ट्रांसफ़र हो रही है कोई ज़रूरी नहीं कि वो प्रैक्टिसेस या जिन कमोडिटी या जो चीज़ आप उगा रहे हैं वो उतनी एफिशिएंट है भी हैं कि नहीं है एक कंपेयर करने के लिए अगर आप देखें तो जो यील्ड का कंपैरिजन है सो पाकिस्तान में जो पर हेक्टेयर यील्ड है वो है 2.86 टन वीट की ये इंडिया में 20% इससे ज़्यादा है और चाइना में 90% ज़्यादा है अगर आप राइस में देखते हैं तो चाइना में 87% हमसे ज़्यादा है इसी तरह एक दफ़ा हम कोई टोमेटो पे रिसर्च कर रहे थे तो उस पर भी देयर इज जस्ट नो कंपैरिजन कि अमेरिका की जो यील्ड्स हैं या जो चाइना की यील्ड्स हैं हमसे बहुत हाई हैं सो ऑल ऑफ दिस इसमें जो आपकी स्किल्ड लेबर है इसका बहुत बड़ा रोल है कि वो किस तरह प्रैक्टिसेस को अडॉप्ट करते हैं फिर एक चीज़ इसकी आई एम श्योर इस डिस्कशन पिछली में भी हमने सुना वो था फार्म क्रेडिट एंड बाय फार्म क्रेडिट यू नो नंबर्स बहुत सारे हैं जो हम हर साल सुनते हैं स्टेट बैंक से भी बट उसमें इवन कमोडिटी की जो फाइनेंसिंग है वो भी शामिल होती है फॉर एग्जांपल अगर कोई गवर्नमेंट जो है वो बोरो कर लेती है वीट के लिए विच इज़ बेसिकली मार्केट इनएफिशिएंसी जो कि कैरी कर रहे हैं हम और उसमें शामिल होती है लगता है ऐसे कि ये पड़ गया है लेकिन ऐसा है नहीं है फार्मर के लिए क्रेडिट बहुत कम अवेलेबल है सो विद ऑल दीज हाई लेवल प्रॉब्लम्स आई मूव ऑन टू नदीम साहब एंड आई रिक्वेस्ट हिम दैट नाउ एग्टेक और टेक इज़ ए मूवमेंट फिनटेक इज़ ए पार्ट ऑफ दैट सो आपके ख्याल में ये पाकिस्तान के जो पुराने प्रॉब्लम्स चले आ रहे हैं इनको सॉल्व करने के लिए क्या अपॉर्चुनिटी अवेलेबल है आज एग्टेक एज ए मूवमेंट व्हाट डज इट ऑफर
शुक्रिया वकास एक्चुअली आई एम गोइंग टू on the spot change the format a little bit. यहाँ ऑडियंस में दो और मेरी नज़र में लोग बैठे हुए हैं जिनकी एक्सपर्टीज़ मुझसे एग्रीकल्चर में बहुत ज़्यादा है, टेक की बात अलग है. So I'd like to invite Dr. Rashid Bajwa and Yasir Ashfaq to join us over here. And I want to open this more as an interactive session with the audience. क्योंकि सुबह भी आपने मुझे सुना, आपने अभी वकास को भी सुना, was also very knowledgeable. But बेहतर ये है कि आपने सुबह के सेशन के आपके जहन में कुछ सवालात होंगे. I'm just going to take 1 or 2 minutes ताकि देखिए मैंने सुबह भी आपसे कहा था कि हमारा एंड रिजल्ट फार्मर की बेनिफिट के लिए होना चाहिए. अब जो पिछला पैनल था क्योंकि उसमें क्वेश्चंस ख़त्म हो गए तो मेरे सवाल उनसे ये होता, आपने एक्सपर्ट स्कोरिंग कर ली, आपने डिजिटल ऑन बोर्डिंग कर ली, तो इसमें फार्मर की दो चीज़ें चेंज होना चाहिए थी. एक, द लेंडिंग रेट शुड हैव कम डाउन, क्योंकि लेंडिंग रेट इज़ अ फंक्शन ऑफ कॉस्ट ऑफ फंडिंग, कॉस्ट ऑफ ऑपरेशन एंड डिफ़ॉल्ट. अगर आपने एक्सपर्ट क्रेडिट स्कोर बना लिया तो आपका डिफ़ॉल्ट कम होना चाहिए. अगर आपने डिजिटल ऑन बोर्डिंग कर लिए तो आपकी कॉस्ट ऑफ ऑन बोर्डिंग कस्टमर कम होनी चाहिए. तो आपने फार्मर को इंटरेस्ट रेट कितना कम किया, असूमिंग कॉस्ट ऑफ फंडिंग रिमेन स्टेबल. तो ये मेरा सवाल होता है अगेन कि देखें हम अपने सोल्यूशंस बता रहे हैं, मेरा सवाल हमेशा है उस सोल्यूशन से फार्मर को क्या असर हुआ. द सेकेंड क्वेश्चन वुड हैव बीन टाइम फॉर क्रेडिट डिसबर्समेंट कितना चेंज हुआ. अगर पहले 1 महीना लगता था एक फार्मर को पैसे देने के लिए या हफ्ता लगता था, तो आपने ये सब इंटरवेंशन करके उस जर्नी को कितना कम किया. हमारे सवालात और हमारी लेंस, आज सुबह भी जो बात हुई 2 इश्यू, एक पॉलिसी इश्यूज हैं. आर वी प्लांटिंग द राइट क्रॉप्स इन द राइट जियोग्राफिकल रीजन. अगर $10 बिलियन की इम्पोर्ट है जैसे बादल साहब कह रहे हैं, तो वो पॉलिसी इश्यूज हैं. सेकेंड इज द माइक्रो इशू कि एक आम स्मॉल होल्डर फार्मर 65-50% आर सेल्फ ओन्ड, उसकी ज़िंदगी को आप किस तरह तब्दील करें. अगर आप वहाँ एड्रेस करेंगे देन मे बी दिस 10 बिलियन जो अभी 8 बिलियन है साल 10 बिलियन हो जाएगा, विच इज सेकेंड ओनली टू योर ऑयल बिल एंड वी आर सपोज टू बी द ग्रेनरी ऑफ द वर्ल्ड. तो ये डायकोटमी किस लिए है. आई एम गोइंग टू स्टॉप. मैं सवालात देने के लिए तैयार हूँ. हम वी हैव ए पैनल ऑफ 3 एक्सपर्ट्स जो आपके सवालात देने को तैयार हैं. मैंने ये सेशन 20 मिनट कर दिया बिकॉज हम 15 से 20 मिनट लेट चल रहे हैं एंड आई हेट बीइंग लेट. तो 30 मिनट की जगह ये सेशन 20 मिनट हो गया है. अब प्लीज़ प्रोवाइड द माइक टू द ऑडियंस और आप हम चारों में से जो भी सवाल ले लें, जो बेस्ट उसको जवाब देने की पोजीशन में होगा वो जवाब दे देगा.
हेलो
जी एहतशाम
सर, मेरा क्वेश्चन आपसे है. चूँकि टेलीनार माइक्रो फाइनेंस बैंक इजी पे आपने डेवलप करवाया और तकरीबन पाकिस्तान का सबसे मतलब फाइनेंशियल इंक्लूजन की अगर बात होती है तो आपका नाम आता है. सर एग्रीकल्चर में लेंडिंग के हवाले से इस चीज़ को मतलब आप माशाल्लाह काम कर रहे हैं, ये नहीं कि नहीं कर रहे, लेकिन इसको एग्रेसिवली
इतने ज़्यादा हो गए हैं और जो कर्जा लेने वाला
फार्मर्स को लेंडिंग कर रहे हैं और एक चीज़ मैं ऐड करना चाहूँगा बिफोर आई हैंड ओवर द माइक। मेरा ख्याल है कि एक इम्पॉर्टेंट चीज़ जो है दैट इज़ द क्रेडिट स्कोरिंग मॉडल। क्रेडिबल क्रेडिट स्कोरिंग मॉडल एग्जिस्ट नहीं करता और जो अप्रोच अभी ली जा रही है, जो हमारे स्टेट बैंक के कोलीग ने कहा कि हमें जी लैंड का डेटा वहाँ से मिल रहा है, नादरा से मिल रहा है, तो आई थिंक ये अप्रोच जो है ये शायद इतनी यूज़फुल नहीं है। एक्चुअली आपको कंजम्पशन का डेटा चाहिए होता है। आपको ये पता होना चाहिए कि फार्मर बेच किसको रहा है, आप फिर एसेट की तरफ जा रहे हैं। हमारे पास लकीली रिटेल आउटलेट्स हैं और उन रिटेल आउटलेट्स पे हमारे पास कंजम्पशन का डेटा है, हम उस कंजम्पशन डेटा से स्कोरिंग करते हैं।
बिल्कुल दुरुस्त। आई थिंक नादरा का डेटा तो सिर्फ आइडेंटिटी वेरीफाई करता है और अगर आपको लैंड होल्डिंग का डेटा मिल रहा है वो लैंड होल्डिंग वेरीफाई कर सकता है, ज़रूरी नहीं है कोलैटरल के तौर पे इस्तेमाल हो। जो आप बात कर रहे हैं बोथ इनपुट एंड आउटपुट का डेटा अगर मौजूद है आपके पास तो आपका क्रेडिट स्कोरिंग मॉडल यकीनन बेहतर हो सकता है। मजीद सवाल? जी, जेंटलमैन इन द फ्रंट।
जी अस्सलाम वालेकुम, मेरा नाम तैमूर अली एंड आई एम रिप्रेजेंटिंग कारंदाज। सिंस एगटेक और फिनटेक की बात हो रही है तो इस फिनोमेना के अंदर वेरी रिसेंटली वी हैव सीन के एगटेक प्लेटफॉर्म्स तो दे हैव स्टार्टेड मशरूमिंग, वैल्यू चेन के डिफरेंट नोड्स को कनेक्ट कर रहे हैं, दे आर क्रिएटिंग वैल्यू, इंफॉर्मेशन फ्लो को डिजिटाइज कर रहे हैं। फिनटेक इज़ नॉट पेसिंग अप फास्ट इनफ टू कनेक्ट विद आइदर एगटेक या जिस तरह के और भी रिटेल टेक के भी प्लेटफॉर्म्स आ गए हैं। So fintech के अंदर what they do is either they make it a technology issue or they make it a security or compliance issue कि यार हमने आपके साथ काम नहीं करना, they take it too long। कुछ वो acknowledge भी नहीं करते कि ये भी बहुत छोटे हैं, ये हमारे जितने नहीं हुए। So with EMIs, hopefully they'll operationalize one day and then digital banking regulations very recently और कुछ licenses के भी noise है वो आए हैं। तो is this the solution के और banks भी हमने देखे हैं एगटेक के अंदर आना शुरू हो गए हैं। तो क्या DBA इज द सोल्यूशन के ये बैंक्स खुद इसको एक्सप्लोर करें आके फील्ड को एंड देन दे क्रिएट सिनर्जीज कि फिनटेक की प्रोडक्ट्स भी हो, पेमेंट्स फॉर द इनपुट, लोन की डिसबर्समेंट इंस्टेंट हो, फार्मर की ऑनबोर्डिंग इंस्टेंट हो, फिर उसकी पेमेंट्स जो कि मार्केट प्लेस के ऊपर होनी है, जो रिसीव करनी है मार्केट फार्मर ने, वो उसके अंदर अकाउंट के अंदर आए। सो ये बैंकों ने एक्सप्लोर करना है, ये EMIs ने करना है, या ये एगटेक प्लेटफॉर्म कोई एक दिन बड़ा हो जाएगा और कोई बैंक आके करेगा? आई थिंक दैट इज स्टिल अ मिसिंग लिंक. उसके ऊपर आपकी ओपिनियन क्या है?
जब मेरा व्यू थोड़ा मुख्तलिफ है, अगर मैं जो 55 मिलियन वॉलेट्स हैं उनको देखूं और उसमें कंपोनेंट देखूं कि एग्रीकल्चर का वॉलेट्स कितने हैं, देयर आर मेजर कंपोनेंट ऑफ वॉलेट्स इन देयर. देखिए जो पुराने दो प्रोवाइडर्स हैं, आई कैन टेक द नेम इजी पैसा एंड जैज़, उनका तो काम ही यही है कि वो पेमेंट्स फ्लो को बेहतर करें. आई एग्री, EMIs 12 EMIs हैं, 3 ऑपरेशनलाइज हुई हैं, अभी उनका इम्पैक्ट नहीं आ रहा. लेकिन जिनके पास PSO PSP लाइसेंस था और जो पेमेंट एग्रीगेटर्स हैं, इफ़ यू लुक एट, अगर द नंबर भी देखें आप स्टेट बैंक के, जो पेमेंट डिजिटाइज हो रहे हैं, आई मीन देयर इज़ अ एक्सपोनेंशियल इंक्रीज क्वार्टर एंड क्वार्टर. ये मैं मानता हूँ कि अभी बहुत गुंजाइश बाकी है. बट इफ़ आई लुक एट एग्रीटेक, EdTech, any kind of tech, the amount of traction fintech has seen so far. I mean, there are even 2 million nano lenders. Microfinance का भी जो नंबर बढ़ा है, वो नैनो की वजह से बढ़ा है. वो जो एक्चुअल ट्रेडिशनल माइक्रोफाइनेंस है वो तो कम हो गई है. ओके, सो फिनटेक इज गोइंग टू बी अ ड्राइवर, बिकॉज वहाँ मतलब लार्जेस्ट नंबर ऑफ प्लेयर्स, 50 से प्लस प्लेयर्स हैं इस वक्त. अगर ऑन बोर्डिंग में मसले हो रहे हैं, दैट मे बी आइसोलेटेड इंसिडेंट इन माई माइंड, बट दे आर हंग्री फॉर बिजनेस. वो तो चाहते हैं कि जितना पेमेंट कर सके जल्द से जल्द करें. But I can elaborate on that further. But I'd like to get more, not that your question is not relevant, कि जो आज का मौजूद है, जो हम एग्रीटेक की बात कर रहे हैं, whether it's the value chain, upstream value chain, downstream value chain, या AI की बात हो रही है, या ड्रोन टेक्नोलॉजी की बात हो रही है, जैसे उस्मान ने पहले बात की सैटेलाइट इमेजिंग, थर्मल इमेजिंग की. आप लोग जो यहाँ दूसरे जो आए हुए हैं इस वक्त, स्टार्टअप्स भी आए हुए हैं, बिकॉज वी ट्राई टू गेट as many stakeholders as possible. आपके जहन में क्या है? You know, we understand कि Agritech is not going to solve the problem, but Agritech can definitely be a contributor towards solving the problem. Ji, sir.
Assalamu alaikum, Farhan from Hajison's group. I'd like to just go back over to the lending part again. Earlier we've heard about EWR, and then we also hear about smallholder farmers, and then we just heard that an average acre input cost for wheat is 42,000. So let's assume 10 acres is an average acre, because less than 90% is less than 12.5 acres. So we're roughly looking at, in the next 2 to 3 years, this is going to go up to 70,000-80,000 rupees per acre. So we're looking at 800,000 rupees. Now 800,000 rupees lending for smallholder farmer, we go through this EWR concept. And one of the biggest challenges that these farmers face is, again, selling these commodities. The problem that there is high default, the problem that there is access to lending, the biggest problem is when they go back to sell these commodities, the rates that they get are not the right rates that we consumers actually end up paying. So there's a huge mismatch there, and all of the people here are trying to solve the same problem. But how do you think, through this EWR concept, lending, would we be able to solve this problem of actually bridging the gap between the farmers and the end consumers?
I have a clear view, but I'm going to see if any of the other people would like to respond to that as well.
Most certainly, and EWR is a very strong concept. लेकिन उसके लिए पूरी वैल्यू चेन की अवेलेबिलिटी होनी चाहिए, और वो वैल्यू चेन वो हो जो फार्मर्स ओन्ड वैल्यू चेन हो. उसके बगैर नहीं होगा. अगर ये थर्ड पार्टी होगा तो मुश्किल हो जाएगा. EWR के कॉन्सेप्ट को आए हुए 3 साल हो गए पाकिस्तान में. अभी तक लिमिटेड EWRs इशू हो रही हैं. ये जो इसकी जो हाफिजाबाद का मॉडल है उसके अंदर EWRs इशू हो रही हैं. लेकिन वहाँ भी ये हो रहा है कि जो फार्मर है, he doesn't want to see the EWR, क्योंकि फार्मर का काम ये है कि he also wants to play. वो रिस्क वो प्ले क्या करता है, वो देखता है कि अगले साल की क्रॉप की क्या प्राइस है. अगर क्रॉप की प्राइस उसको बेहतर मिलेगी तो वो बिल्कुल नहीं जाएगा उसके अंदर EWR के अंदर. वो उस वक्त जाएगा जब प्राइस डिप्रेस होगी, उसको ये नहीं पता कि नेक्स्ट ईयर प्राइस क्या मिलेगी. सो ये जब तक के स्टैंडर्डाइजेशन, जब तक स्टेबल नहीं होगी प्राइसेस, उस वक्त तक ये EWR का इशू जो है ना, ये डाइसी रहेगा. But nevertheless, EWR is going to be one of a very strong element in this entire farmer's own value chain if the country has to move forward. Thank you.
एक और aspect जिसका is not really fully appreciated by the government too. अगर EWR का पूरा इकोसिस्टम डेवलप हो जाता है तो गवर्नमेंट को ये पूरी जो कमोडिटी फाइनेंसिंग है इससे बाहर निकल जाएंगे. सो इनको हर साल आउटस्टैंडिंग मेरा ख्याल है 450-500 बिलियन रुपीस गवर्नमेंट ऑफ पंजाब ने एक साल लिए हुए होते हैं. जस्ट इमेजिन. और उसमें भी सर्कुलर डेट का एक बड़ा एलिमेंट आ गया. देयर इज लीकेज जो कि क्लियर नहीं हो रही. जो थेफ्ट होती है या कुछ और जो अंडर वेट है वो क्लियर नहीं हो रहा, वो लीकेज है. तो ये दिस इज समथिंग आई थिंक यू नो एज ए पॉलिसी रिकमेंडेशन इवन फॉर AWR whenever it is discussed should be raised very strongly because it's a problem which is brewing and ultimately taxpayer will have to pay. और अगर ये regime strong हो जाए तो सबसे ज़्यादा जान जिसकी छूटेगी वो गवर्नमेंट खुद है.
मेरा ये ख्याल है कि आपको कोई भी सिस्टम को रिप्लेस करने के लिए एक बेहतर और मोर एफिशिएंट सिस्टम लाना होता है. सो इफ़ द मिडल मैन आर स्टिल in existence and working, this is because they have been very efficient. और उससे ज़्यादा efficient system अभी शायद नहीं introduce हुआ उस scale पे. So जो वो काम करते हैं, अगर कुछ companies वो सारे काम right from provision of seeds to inputs to, because Agritech is much more than जो middleman देता है, right from soil testing से लेके satellite imagery and हर चीज़ वो हर मरहले पे वो उसको which middleman doesn't do. And along with that, financing. And financing not only for the crop but also for emergency purposes. So अगर आपको ज़्यादा efficient system लाने हैं जो existing है तो उसको replace करने के लिए आपको उससे बेहतर काम करने पड़ेंगे. हमने अभी रिसेंटली एक चैलेंज फंड एग्रीकल्चर के लिए किया है. जैसे वकास कह रहे थे कि हमने बहुत कोशिश की कि यार इंस्टीट्यूशन माइक्रो फाइनेंस इंस्टीट्यूशन कर ले, कोई प्रोडक्ट्स नहीं थी. सो हम अब आगे चल के फर्स्ट राउंड ऑफ चैलेंज फंड हैज़ बीन कंप्लीटेड एंड वन ऑफ द कंपनी हैज़ बीन ऑन बोर्डेड. तो हम यही कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि इस तरह के सिस्टम्स को सपोर्ट करें.
हाउ आर वी डूइंग फॉर टाइम? वी डन? ओके, तो thank you very much. I hope this was a useful session rather than two people talking. I thought we would get the views. अच्छा, ये मैं आपसे कहते चलूँ कि दो चीज़ें. एक, ये कॉन्फ्रेंस एक सालाना कॉन्फ्रेंस होगी. We will now make this a regular event. दूसरा, आज जो जितनी हमारी बातचीत हो रही है उसकी बेसिस पे we will ask the volunteers and create within the Pakistan FinTech network, possibly PMN as well, a Agritech group जिसका एक policy formulation जो इश्यूज हम आज डिस्कस करेंगे उस पर फिर हम कोशिश करेंगे कि नॉट ओनली पॉलिसी पेपर बनाए हुकूमत से शेयर करने के लिए, बट विद इन द ग्रुप इट्स वेल अगर हम नेटवर्किंग करके कुछ एग्जीक्यूशन कर सकते हैं तो उसकी कोशिश भी करेंगे. द ग्रुप कैन मीट मोर ऑफन. हम उसका एजेंडा निकाल देंगे. फहद जो है आपसे बात करेंगे एंड के अंदर जो पीपल आर इंटरेस्टेड इन जॉइनिंग दैट. फिर हम यूज दिस ओकेजन नॉट एज अ वन ऑफ इवेंट बट कोशिश ये करेंगे इसमें फिर हम आगे पेशे पर कुछ सोल्यूशन निकाल सकें. शुक्रिया बहुत बहुत. जी,
जो इंस्टीट्यूशन जो EWR इशू कर रही हैं उनको भी अपने नेटवर्क का मेंबर बनाया.
यकीनन. थैंक यू वेरी मच. शुक्रिया बहुत बहुत.
थैंक यू सो मच सर. सर प्लीज़ थोड़ा सा इंतज़ार कर लीजिए पिक्चर्स के लिए. थैंक यू. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. All right. टाइम की थोड़ी शॉर्टेज है. आपको पता है कि रमज़ान की वजह से भी फिर नमाज का टाइम भी हो जाएगा. तो बिला किसी ताख़ीर के हम अपना तीसरा सेशन जो है वो स्टार्ट करते हैं. And this session is about co-creating products and services for reducing information asymmetry for farmers. और इस सेशन को जो चेयर कर रहे हैं यासिर अशफाक साहब, चीफ एग्जीक्यूटिव ऑफिसर PMIC, प्लीज कम ऑन स्टेज. आयशा अहमद, फाउंडर पाक एग्री मार्केट, प्लीज कम ऑन स्टेज. चीफ स्ट्रेटजी ऑफिसर बाखबर किसान फवाद इमरान खान, प्लीज कम ऑन स्टेज. Founder and Chief Executive at Reap Agro Private Limited, Ehtisham Ali, please come on stage. CEO Industries Muhammad Saad Khan, please come on stage. Group Head Digital Banking Bank Al-Fala, Yahya Khan, will join us shortly virtually, inshallah.
So shall we start?
Sir, you have, as you know that we have time shortage, so it is 45-minute session. All right?
ठीक है जी.
Thank you.
Let me put it on the stopwatch and. अच्छा ये सेशन ये भी है कि I think with fasting और दोपहर का वो वक्त आ रहा है कि जो सब लोग मुझे लग रहा है कि अब सोने के मूड में भी हैं. So थोड़ा सा इसका फॉर्मेट जो है ना मैं लाया तो क्वेश्चन था मैंने शेयर किए थे. But I would like to change that format. और मेरी पे सबसे पहले ये रिक्वेस्ट होगी कि 2-2 मिनट सारे पार्टिसिपेंट्स लेके अपने आप को इंट्रोड्यूस करवा दें और जो आपकी कंपनी स्पेसिफिकली विद रिलेशन टू दिस सेशन का जो इसका टाइटल है इंफॉर्मेशन एसिमेट्रीज एंड यू नो सर्विसेज एंड प्रोडक्ट्स दैट वी नीड टू प्रोवाइड उसके बारे में कुछ बात करें. Not more than 2 to 3 minutes. And then I'll put a couple of questions और उसके बाद फिर हम audience के questions लेंगे ताकि हम इसको ज़रा quick और ज़रा sharp तरीके से चलाएं और audience की भी involvement रखें. Is that fine with everyone? So let me start by introducing, just take a couple of minutes. So PMIC is a microfinance apex institution, a wholesale lender. We lend to microfinance institutions and banks across the country. And we also work on innovative approaches in the microfinance sector to introduce new products and services and delivery mechanisms. When it comes to information asymmetry, so this is, I think, one of the very key areas of economics, जो कि 1970s, 80s में develop हुआ था. Based on the fact, मतलब Stiglitz और Ekerlof वगैरह ने इस पे बड़ा काम किया because their concern was that this is one of the factors which, if could be addressed, can improve the efficiencies in various markets. And when we talk about जब हम agriculture की बात करते हैं और small holder farmers की बात करते हैं तो वहाँ पे बेतहा जो है lack of information है and at various stages. और यही हम देखते हैं कि कोई भी जब development होती है ख़ासतौर पे agriculture में मुख्तलिफ़ किस्म के stages of development आए हैं, be it introduction of machinery, chemicals, fertilizer, pesticides आए और फिर GMO आए, वो फिल्टर होके जब स्मॉल फार्मर्स तक जाते हैं तो उसमें डेकेड्स लग जाते हैं. लार्ज फार्मर्स उसको अडॉप्ट कर लेते हैं. सो आज का जो हम सेशन है हम कोशिश करेंगे कि कुछ इस किस्म की चीज़ों को एड्रेस करें. सो सबसे पहले मैं रिक्वेस्ट करूँगा आयशा अहमद से जो फाउंडर है पाक एग्री मार्केट की कि वो अपने इंस्टीट्यूशन के बारे में बताएं और थोड़ा सा जो आप काम करते हैं विद रिस्पेक्ट टू दिस पर्टिकुलर टॉपिक वो ज़रा हमें.
Assalamu alaikum everybody. I'm Aisha Ahmed and I'm founder and CEO of Park Agri Market. Park Agri Market is basically a brainchild of my husband. He himself is a PhD doctor in precision agriculture and belongs to a farmer family, and myself I'm a computer engineer. And that's the tech part and the agri part, and that's how we have come up with Park Agri Market. Park Agri Market basically, we very simply put, we are digitalizing the agri input sector. That is, we are bringing all the brick and mortar businesses online, and we are creating their online showcases, or we are digitalizing them, so that we are addressing the input excess problem that is faced by the farmer almost every single day when he has to go and fetch products for cropping from harvest to cultivation and management. So this is the kind of thing that we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Fawad Imran Khan sahab, please go ahead.
जी अस्सलाम वालेकुम. फवाद खान from बाखबर किसान. जी बाखबर किसान का जो primary objective is to build the capacity of farmers. So we connect with farmers using a variety of channels, जिसमें हम SMS के ज़रिए उनको उनके क्रॉप्स के मुताबिक एडवाइस देते हैं. We provide them updated weather information. We use voice messaging for providing disaster alerts, which could be related to disease or inclement weather. We have a mobile app, we have a WhatsApp channel, we use YouTube. We have a lot of subscribers on YouTube and a lot of views. We have, as a company, access to something like 16 million farmers, जिसमें से about 7 million are monthly active users. So that means that they have contacted us through our IVR or through our call center. हमारे call center में we have about 40 people with different specialities. All of them are graduates of agricultural universities. अच्छा, इसके अलावा what we as Bakhbar Kisan, what we are doing is developing linkages with value chain partners.
Okay.
So in fact, Aisha's company, we work with them.
Great.
Ihtisham बैठे हुए हैं, we work with them.
Right.
We connect them with lenders. We connect them with weather index-based insurance providers. Wo Asia Insurance is here. They'll be speaking
So we have
later.
the whole ecosystem here.
So we can't do it all. और ये बात हुई थी, and we are working with Bajwa साहब, NRSP, उन्होंने भी जिक्र किया. So we, it's such a vast domain. We can't do it all. And so our objective is to be a platform of choice for connecting all value chain partners, be they the input providers, lenders, insurance providers. और सबसे जो बात है जिसकी बहुत कम बात हुई is buyers. Then they are very important. Maybe we can talk about them later.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have Yahya Khan Saab. Excuse me. Do we have Yahya Khan online? No. Okay. So let's move to Mr. Ihtisham Ali. Ji Ihtisham Saab.
Assalamu alaikum. Ihtisham Ali, affiliated with Reap Agro, founder और CEO हूँ उसका. रीप एग्रो एक फिनटेक है, सॉरी फिनटेक नहीं, एग्रीटेक है, जो कि स्मॉल होल्डर फार्मर को इनेबल करता है कि वो इंटरेस्ट फ्री इन काइंड लोन ले सके. मतलब वी कनेक्ट देम विद डिफरेंट फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूट्स. फिनटेक्स की बात कर रहा हूँ जिसमें फिंजा हमारे साथ, मतलब उनके साथ हम कोलैबोरेट कर रहे हैं. मतलब वो हमारे फार्मर को लेंड करते हैं, और इसके अलावा क्रेडिट पर तो उनके थ्रू हम फार्मर को लेंड करते हैं. इसके अलावा हम फार्मर को ऑन ग्राउंड एडवाइजरी देते हैं, जो कि मतलब फार्मर की यील्ड को किस तरह मतलब बेहतर बनाया जा सकता है. और हम फार्मर के रिस्क को मिटिगेट करते हैं. जिस तरह डॉक्टर फवाद साहब ने कहा, इन्होंने हमें कनेक्ट करवाया था ब्लू मार्बल माइक्रो इंश्योरेंस से, जिसके थ्रू हमने पाकिस्तान में पहली मरतबा वेदर इंडेक्स बेस्ड इंश्योरेंस इंट्रोड्यूस करवाया. और जो पायलट हमने एशिया इंश्योरेंस, जिसमें हमारा पार्टनर भी था, तो वो सक्सेसफुल भी हुआ. उसके थ्रू जो है ना, अभी हम उसको स्केल भी कर रहे हैं. इसके अलावा जो बेसिक प्रॉब्लम होता है नॉर्मली फार्मर का, हम एक बात कर रहे हैं सुबह से कि आड़ती ईवल भी है, मतलब उसके हवाले से बात हो रही है. लेकिन आड़ती और बैंक करता क्या है? बैंक सिर्फ पैसे दे देता है, लेकिन आड़ती जब फार्मर को पैसे दे रहा होता है तो उसके साथ उसको वो मतलब एट द एंड फैसिलिटेट भी कर रहा होता है जब उसकी प्रोड्यूस पहुंच जाती है. मतलब वो उसको मल्टीपल वे से.
तो फिर आपसे क्वेश्चन में ये हम मजीद करेंगे. तो
जी सर.
जी,
तो हम फार्मर को एट द एंड हम करते क्या हैं, हम फार्मर का जो प्रोड्यूस होता है वो फ्यूचर प्राइसेस पे बाय करते हैं, जिसमें मतलब हम हमारी लिंकेजेस हैं, जिसमें हम पेप्सिको, रफान और इस तरह की मुख्तलिफ छोटी मतलब जो कॉरपोरेट बायर्स हैं प्रोड्यूस के, एग्रीकल्चर प्रोड्यूस के, तो उनके साथ हम फार्मर को कनेक्ट करते हैं और उनके प्रोड्यूस को मतलब सही प्राइसेस पे बेचते हैं, ताकि फार्मर की इनकम को इंश्योर किया जा सके. तो मतलब फ्रॉम स्टार्ट टिल एंड हम ये सारा प्रोसेस करते हैं.
गुड, थैंक यू.
जी सर, थैंक यू.
साद खान, over to you. And you know the question.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum everybody. My name is Saji. I am the CEO and founder of Industries. Industries is an agritech play. हमारा एक बड़ा मेन प्रोडक्ट है, दैट्स रेडियो ज़मींदार. शायद आपने डिफरेंट कंपनी वो स्टैंडीज वगैरह भी लगी हुई हैं. सो जी, रेडियो ज़मींदार एशियन कॉन्टिनेंट का पहला एग्री बेस्ड रेडियो स्टेशन है जो हम रन कर रहे हैं. लकीली पाकिस्तान के अंदर it's going great. टेलकोस के साथ हमारा एक मॉडल चलता है, हम टेरेनॉर के साथ, जैज़ के साथ, जोंग के साथ, डिफरेंट टेलको के साथ हम काम कर रहे हैं. So Radio Zamindar is a 24-hour radio station which purely focused on agriculture, content, livestock and rural health. इसके अंदर हम जी मल्टीपल रीजनल लैंग्वेजेस कवर कर रहे हैं, कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि हम तमाम कवर करें. करंटली सराइकी, सिंधी, बलोची, पंजाबी, हिंद को, गिलगिती हम ऐड करना चाह रहे हैं. तो उसके अंदर हमारा एक काम चल रहा है. थोड़ा मुश्किल होता है रीजनल लैंग्वेज को ऐड करना. तो एक कंप्लीट रेडियो स्टेशन एनवायरनमेंट है, प्योरली फोकस्ड है. और वजह यह है कि ताकि हम चाहें कि जिस भी टाइम भी कोई बंदा हमारे साथ इंगेज हो और रिलेटेड उसको कंटेंट, रिलेटेड इन्फॉर्मेशन उसको मिल रही हो. डेली का क्रॉप कैलेंडर्स है जो हम लोग शेयर कर रहे होते हैं अपने तमाम लिस्टर्स के साथ, सब्सक्राइबर्स के साथ. मिलियंस ऑफ सब्सक्राइबर्स है जी हमारे पास करंटली. इनफ्लो बहुत अच्छा है लोगों का, बहुत इंगेजमेंट कंटेंट है. उसके साथ जी अभी हमने शुरू किया है एक एग्री हेल्पलाइन जिसमें 9 to 5 ऑब्वियसली एक एग्रोनॉमिस्ट अवेलेबल होंगे जो बहुत सी रन टाइम की क्यूरीज फार्मर्स की आंसर कर सकते हैं. सिमिलरली लाइव स्टॉक हेल्पलाइन है, हेल्थ हेल्पलाइन है. अ पार्ट ऑफ इट जी वी आर ऑल्सो जंपिंग इनटू क्रॉप इंश्योरेंस और इस तरह से रिलेटेड प्रोडक्ट्स के अंदर हम आ रहे हैं जो एग्जैक्टली फार्मर को हम बेनिफिट कर सकें. और उसके साथ एक छोटा सा सिनेरियो एक और हमने शुरू किया, दैट्स लेंडिंग. सो इट्स नॉट B2C लेंडिंग, इट्स अ B2B लेंडिंग मॉडल. एक रिटेल लेंडिंग मॉडल हम इंट्रोड्यूस कर रहे हैं और हमारे जो कोच और हमारे जो बोर्ड मेंबर हैं नदीम हुसैन साहब, ही इज़ ऑल देयर, उनकी गाइडलाइन से हम फिनटेक को भी इंक्लूड कर रहे हैं जी.
Thank you so much. Ji, Assalamu alaikum, Yahya. So, Yahya, what we are discussing is, if you can also, explain in 2 minutes, introduce your organization, although everyone knows about Bank Al-Falah, but how is Bank Al-Falah contributing in co-creating products and services for reducing information asymmetries for the farmers? 2 to 3 minutes for you. Thank you. We can't hear you. Maybe you are muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you. So Bank Al-Falah, I'm responsible for digitization in and through Bank Al-Falah. So what we are doing is we are working with, in terms of the farmers segment, we are working with a few startups who are in the business of providing e-commerce marketplaces for the input material first, which includes the seeds, fertilizer, pesticides, and which I'm sure has been talked about, or uski financing, which is embedded financing through those e-commerce portals. Usme Bank Al-Falah has been working. And then also in the placement of the forward contracts for buying those produce at the output. So those are some of the initiatives in particular regarding utilization of our balance sheet for loans, as well as our digitization efforts for embedding in the value chains rather than creating some alternative value chains. And as regards KG, how we are helping in information asymmetry, we have always been of the belief, and which has been the belief, I'm sure, of many of the people involved in digitization, that information for financial services providers is important, and that information can be had either through the example of some of the portals that I talked about, or some of the payments information that we get. So however we get the information, the structured or unstructured data, jiski basis pe banks can then underwrite credit algorithm and provide financing. So that's something that we've been working with a few startups in helping provide access to credit to the farmers.
Okay, thank you. So my first question is, what are the fundamental gaps and information asymmetries in the whole agriculture value chains? And in your opinion, are the costs, are the benefits sufficient enough to meet the benefits of any such intervention? So let me start with, aapse start karte hain, Fawad Khan sahab. Have I been able to explain the question?
Could you repeat the question?
So the question is that We all agree that there are information asymmetries for the smallholder farmers. So are the costs, are the benefits high enough for the costs incurred in order to, provide, to eliminate those gaps and information asymmetries?
So the short answer is yes. One has to.
थोड़ा सा वो asymmetries को भी 2-3 को मुख्तलिफ stages जैसे production है, preparation है, उस stages पे जरा.
देखिए, so what is happening is that the best practices, they are evolving, particularly from the climate change perspective. जो cropping calendar है, that is shifting, and farmers do not have, especially the smallholder farmers, do not have access to the information on the shifted cropping calendars and the evolving best practices. Heat, March में heat wave आ गई, उसमें what are the risk mitigation measures that they should take. So our company does a lot of work in this area in getting information across to farmers based on their location. And because we work at scale, the costs are amortized across a large number of farmers. So,
thank you. जी आयशा.
So I'll just like to add over here. ज़्यादातर हम जब इंफॉर्मेशन की बात करते हैं हम लोग कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग के बारे में जो है हम लोग फोकस्ड होते हैं कि फार्मर्स कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग है उनकी ये क्रॉपिंग कैलेंडर शिफ्ट क्लाइमेट बट इज समथिंग वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट टू अंडरस्टैंड कि इंफॉर्मेशन ऑलमोस्ट आप समझें कि क्रॉपिंग साइकिल में हमेशा ज़रूरत होती है फार्मर वेंडर मोनोपोली का शिकार हो जाता है क्योंकि उसको प्राइसेस नहीं पता होती इनपुट की सीड की प्राइसेस मतलब दैट इज़ बीइंग चेंज हर जगह हर इलाके में प्राइसेस मॉडिफाई वेरी होती हैं तो ये इन्फॉर्मेशन भी होना फार्मर के पास कि क्या कौन से सीज़न में कौन सी क्रॉप की क्या सीड की प्राइस है दिस इज़ ऑल्सो एन इन्फॉर्मेशन that is lacking and that's something that we need to address when we're talking about information asymmetries, right? इसके अलावा वाइल क्रॉपिंग में आप देखें कि कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग और जो मॉडर्न हम कहते हैं जो अब आपकी मॉडर्न टेक्नोलॉजी एंड यूजेज एंड न्यू वेज ऑफ फार्मिंग वो दैट्स वन थिंग एंड बट देयर इज़ वन मोर थिंग कि हम ये भी फार्मर को पता होना चाहिए कि फॉर एग्जांपल इफ देयर इज़ XYZ केमिकल दैट नीड्स जो कि मुझे ज़रूरत है इस पेस्ट को मारने के लिए वो कौन कौन से प्रोडक्ट्स में दस्तियाब है और मेरी बजट में क्या चीज़ आएगी तो दिस इज़ ऑल्सो समथिंग that is to be added in the information asymmetries and finally when he is going to sell his crop तब भी हमें ज़रूरत है कि farmers should have this amount of knowledge कि अगर मेरी मंडी में इस चीज़ का ये रेट है तो बाकी मंडियों में क्या रेट है and if the transport cost is the same then maybe I should not mobilize it over here maybe I should mobilize it to some other mandi. And lastly, information of buyers की जैसे फवाद साहब ने बात की कि there are multiple buyers. Now we see that there are a lot of farm-to-home services who are interested to connect to farmers and to increase their profits. तो उनकी भी information होना भी हमें cater करना चाहिए. And finally जो अभी आपने कहा था कि cost और वो वाली बात तो ये चीज़ मुझे लगता है हमारे लिए बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है हम पाकिस्तानी ज़्यादातर आई फील दैट वी आर वेरी टेक्नोलॉजी फोकस्ड अगर हम लोग ये नहीं बताएंगे ना वी हैव समथिंग वेरी फैंसी काइंड ऑफ स्प्रिंग टेक्नोलॉजी या समथिंग तो पीपल वुड नॉट मे बी वेरी अटेंटिव टू आवर सोल्यूशन द पॉइंट बीइंग कि टेक्नोलॉजी आजकल टेक्नोलॉजी की कीमत बहुत कम है हम लोग बहुत फ्री सर्विसेज से जो है अपना यूज़ केस वेरीफाई कर सकते हैं वी हैव स्काइप वी हैव व्हाट्सएप वी हैव मल्टीपल फ्री सर्विसेज यूट्यूब चैनल्स एटसेट्रा जहां हम लोग अपने यूज़ केस को वेरीफाई कर सकते हैं और आप इवेंचुअल अपना सोल्यूशन जब तक आप उस चीज़ पे आ रहे हैं MVPs आप लोग फ्री सर्विसेज पे कर सकते हैं तो फिर द कॉस्ट ऑफ डिवाइसिंग सोल्यूशंस हैज़ बीन ड्रास्टिकली रिड्यूस्ड
Okay.
Right, that's what I
think. एहतशाम आप जरा मैं एक आध चीज़ इसमें और ऐड कर दूं because ये भी देखा गया है कि the quality and the price, right, of inputs और ख़ास तौर पे seeds हैं, pesticides हैं, fertilizers हैं, उसकी भी regulation यानी कि उसकी भी monitoring और जो एक regulatory role आता है government का उसमें भी आपका ख्याल है कि कोई गुंजाइश है? और सो इसी क्वेश्चन को आप इस एंगल से भी ज़रा
सर मैं
एड्रेस करने की कोशिश करें।
अगर देखें, जब हम स्टार्ट करते हैं तो स्टार्ट लोन से होता है, ठीक है सर। अगर एक फार्मर के पास पैसे हैं, वो शॉपकीपर के पास जाता है, वो उसे रिक्वेस्ट करता है मुझे एक सर्टन पेस्टिसाइड चाहिए, सीड चाहिए या फर्टिलाइज़र चाहिए, तो अगर उसके पास कैश है तो उसको वही प्रोडक्ट मिलेगी जो क्वालिटी होगी और जो उसे पता होगा, या दुकानदार उसको वही पिच करेगा। लेकिन इन केस अगर उसके पास पैसे नहीं हैं तो वो उससे वो चीज़ मांगेगा। जाहिर सी बात है सर, ये गैप बनता इसी वजह से है कि मतलब एक तो हमारे पास नॉलेज नहीं है, नॉलेज के साथ हमारे पास पैसे भी नहीं है, तो मतलब ये दोनों चीज़ें जो है ना, और ये इफेक्ट किस चीज़ को करती है? डायरेक्टली हमारी यील्ड्स को जो है ना ये इफेक्ट करती हैं। हमारी यील्ड कम आती है, हमारे पास पैसे कमाते हैं, हमारे पास पैसे कमाते हैं, तो मतलब हम वो जो पॉवर्टी का ट्रैप है उसमें हम दसते जा रहे होते हैं। तो सर ये सारी चीज़ें स्टार्ट होती हैं लोनिंग से, लोनिंग के बाद जो है ना ये और चीज़ें फिर चलती जाती हैं। जिस तरह आयशा मैडम ने कहा कि जब प्रोड्यूस सेल करते हैं हम, तो वही प्रोड्यूस जो सेल हो रही है उसकी भी हमें क्लैरिटी होनी चाहिए कि मतलब वो कहाँ पे सेल हो रही है और कितने प्राइस में सेल हो रही है। एक कॉर्पोरेट बायर है, वो उसको जो है ना 50 रुपए में केजी ले रहा है, लेकिन आप अगर आरती के पास जाते हो तो वो 35 रुपीज़ में ले रहा है, और उसके साथ वो 5-7% कमीशन भी ले रहा है। तो मतलब वो डिफरेंसेस जो चीज़ें होती हैं, इसके मतलब जब फार्मर को इस चीज़ों के बारे में पता होता है तो वो जो है ना मतलब अच्छा डिसीजन भी ले सकता है और मतलब उसका फ़ायदा भी हो सकता है।
ठीक है साद, आपके बिकॉज यू आर रनिंग अ रेडियो चैनल, तो उस लिहाज से क्या इंफॉर्मेशन आपके ख्याल में मोस्ट इफ़ेक्टिव रहती है? और वही जो मैंने क्वेश्चन किया कि जो कॉस्ट है उस इंफॉर्मेशन की, वो जो ट्रांसलेट होती है बेनिफिट में, आपका ख्याल में वो कितनी सब्सटेंशियल है?
एब्सोल्युटली जी। सबसे पहले तो ये दैट्स वेरी ट्रू कि एक तो जो फार्मर्स का जो एक्सेस है ना टुवर्ड्स इंफॉर्मेशन, रियल में फवाद साहब ऑलरेडी दे आर डूइंग द सेम थिंग, वो बहुत चैलेंजिंग हो चुका हुआ है। अब एक तो उसको कॉस्ट इफेक्टिव लाना और एग्जैक्टली उस फार्मर तक उसकी उस एग्जैक्ट इन्फॉर्मेशन को पहुंचाना जो यूजुअली उसके पास अगर नहीं होती, नंबर वन दिस इज अ चैलेंज, दिस इज वेरी कॉस्टली। जब आप इसको ट्रांसलेट करते हैं टुवर्ड्स कि हम एक ऐसे एंगल में लाएं कि वो एक कॉस्ट वाइज भी बेनिफिट हो जाए और फार्मर तक एग्जैक्टली उसको वो मैसेज भी पहुंच जाए, दैट्स अ चैलेंज। वो चैलेंज कवर हो जाता है थ्रू आवर मीडियम, जो मीडियम हम लोग SMS बेस्ड, आउटबाउंड कॉल्स बेस्ड, डिजिटल बेस्ड, एप्लीकेशन बेस्ड यूज कर रहे होते हैं। अब बात आती है जी फार्मर उसको कितना सेवी है उसको यूज करने में। ये एक और बहुत बड़ा चैलेंज बनता जा रहा है। पहले ये काफी बीच में एक सिनेरियो आया था, ये बड़ा आसान हो गया था, अब फिर से एक तरह से ये चैलेंज बनता जा रहा है। रीजन भी है कि लोगों की जो नीड्स हो गई ना वो थोड़ी सी डिफरेंट हो गई। ऑल्दो जैसे आयशा ने कहा कि जो टेक प्राइसेस है ना वो बड़ी मिनिमल हो चुकी हैं, बट अनफॉर्चुनेटली जो उसका पॉकेट साइज है ना जो फार्मर का, वो भी बहुत मिनिमल होता जा रहा है। पहले फार्मर लोन लेते थे, अपने लिए कुछ ना कुछ काम कर लेते थे, किसी जगह पे इन्वेस्ट कर लेते थे फार्म के ऊपर। अब फार्मर लोन लेता है तो कभी शायद बच्चे की शादी करा रहा होता है, कुछ ना कुछ एक ऐसे एलिमेंट में वो लगा रहा होता है कि उसके बाद उसका डिफॉल्ट रेट बढ़ता जाता है। MFBs का, कमर्शियल बैंक का, सबका ये बहुत बड़ा चैलेंज बन चुका है। सो I believe there is this lacking there.
So let me take couple of questions और फिर एक दो क्वेश्चन फिर मैं दोबारा से पैनल से करूँगा। So जी प्लीज़ ज़रा अगर माइक प्रोवाइड कर दें।
Hi, this is Rishabh Shaukat from Pakistan Agriculture Research. And my question is, what do you think is the most effective way to train or educate farmers given the literacy rates that are present in rural areas? Essentially what I'm trying to ask is, what is the best method of disseminating information to farmers?
Aisha, would you like to respond?
Yeah, why not? Okay, पहले एक तो ये बात I'd like to highlight कि हम लोगों को ये generic हमारी understanding है कि farmers जो है they'll not there is a certain technical inertia, that's true. लेकिन अगर हम उन्हें value provide करेंगे, अगर farmers को किसी भी service में value नज़र आएगी तो they'll be eager to learn. This is our personal learning from working in Agritech कि अगर farmer को लगेगा कि मुझे इस platform से benefit है तो they will be using it. Plus ये कि अभी आपने जो specifically to answer your question, इसके हम लोगों ने जो चीज़ की वो community element को हम लोगों ने बहुत ज़्यादा leverage किया. फॉर एग्जांपल हम लोग अपनी रिसर्च के लिए चकवाल गए, वहाँ किसी ने हमें बताया कि हमने आपके प्लेटफॉर्म के थ्रू, एक बड़ी एजेड से खातून थे वो फार्मर, उन्होंने कहा हमने आपके प्लेटफॉर्म के थ्रू सोलर पैनल वेंडर्स को कनेक्ट किया। तो मुझे बहुत हैरानगी हुई, मैंने कहा डू यू इवन हैव यू नो स्मार्टफोन एंड यू लुक वेरी एजेड एंड हाउ कुड यू यूज़ इट। तो उन्होंने मुझे बताया कि मेरे पास नहीं है स्मार्टफोन, लेकिन मेरे जो भतीजा है उसके पास स्मार्टफोन एंड ही वाज अ यंग गाय। सो दिस इज़ समथिंग हम लेवरेज कर सकते हैं कम्युनिटी को, क्योंकि ये किसान वगैरह जो हैं दे वेरी क्लोजली नेट। सही, तो अगर आप समझो कि आप इफ़ यू ट्रेन वन पर्सन इन एवरी कम्युनिटी, दैट मीन्स दैट यू कैन ट्रेन द पीपल हु आर लिंक्ड टू इट। सो आई थिंक दैट माइट हेल्प यू इफ़ यू वांट टू यू नो। थैंक यू।
Yes, I'd like to add a few things. एक तो जो भी आप solution बनाएं इस information dissemination के लिए, that has to be designed in a way कि वो acceptable हो farmers को. So it requires field research. आप जाएं कि आप जो messaging कर रहे हैं वो उनको acceptable है या नहीं है. आप अगर text messaging कर रहे हैं illiterate है तो साथ आप voice messaging भी करें. आपकी वो फील्ड टीम्स हों जो कि वहाँ उनको जाके डेमोन्स्ट्रेशन भी करें. सो यू हैव टू एम्प्लॉय ऑल चैनल्स. बट और ये आयशा की बात, आई सेकंड दैट, डू नॉट अंडर एस्टिमेट द इंटेलिजेंस ऑफ द फार्मर और एनी इंडिविजुअल. इस वक्त व्हाट्सएप जो है वो एवरीवन इज़ यूजिंग इट. So we have a WhatsApp channel. हमें farmers connect, they send us photographs, voice messages, voice notes. वैसे आप जाके देखें तो they may not even have a smartphone. उनकी family में एक smartphone होगा which is being used exactly as Aisha said. Exactly. So this is very important कि deliver a quality solution, but do some testing. What works and what doesn't work, and it may be what works in one region may not work in another region. So that has to be taken into account.
ठीक है. So देखें, कोई भी नई टेक्नोलॉजी और नए मेथडोलॉजी जो भी इनोवेशन हो रही है उसको अडॉप्ट करने के लिए certainly will require funding. Financing is an important part, right? So let me put this question to Yahya. या आपके ख्याल में जो कमर्शियल बैंक्स हैं या माइक्रो फाइनेंस इंस्टीट्यूशंस हैं वो क्या तैयार हैं कि अगर कोई नई इनोवेशंस आती हैं उसके लिए जो फंडिंग की रिक्वायरमेंट होगी स्मॉल फार्मर्स के लिए टू अडॉप्ट दैट टेक्नोलॉजी? इट कुड बी इवन बेटर सीड, सो बेटर सीड वुड बी मच मोर एक्सपेंसिव. सो उसको फंड करने के लिए फर्टिलाइजर्स को और चीज़ों को क्या आपके ख्याल में माइक्रो फाइनेंस इंस्टीट्यूशंस, कमर्शियल बैंक्स क्या वो तैयार हैं कि उस किस्म की फंडिंग प्रोवाइड कर सकें?
जी, absolutely. देखें, banks always, I'm sure, banks look at unit economics, and when the unit economics of something is right, it's something that banks are, you would always find willing to sponsor and finance. So in this case, as long as the input cost is less than the output sales, which it should be in all cases, then that's the right unit economics. Banks ना सिर्फ willing है, banks certainly at least in our case, and I'm aware of at least one other financial institution who are actually working with the value chains to enable banks to come in. देखें, एक तो conventional तरीके से financing होती थी कि जी land record में जाके उसके ऊपर अपना charge create करवा लेना, which has happened, the digitization has happened in at least one province, Punjab, but has not happened in the others, or at least to the extent that banks would like. Now with the advent of digitization, banks are working with value chain ecosystem partners, and many of them are also sitting on this panel, and I'm sure in the audiences, कि हम उस information, एक तो आपने information asymmetry for the farmer की बात की, दूसरी ये कि हम उस information को digitize कैसे कर सकते हैं? How can we so that the banks then start to get comfort and move away from just creating charge in the land records and pledging their lands, and they can be sure that, okay, I am financing this input material, however expensive, that I am sure that I'm going to get my money back with some level of margin, hopefully at a competitive rate, which is more competitive than that of Aartis. Aartis have a role to play, but then the credible formal financial institutions with much lower cost of funding should come in, and then the bank should say, okay, I'm willing to put my capital at risk, provided I have access to quality information about that farmer and his land holding, and then he's hooked onto some material that I'm using, a medium that I'm using, in this case e-commerce. And then I have enough comfort that this forward contract that has been put in place is competitive enough that on the day when he has to actually provide the output material 4 से 6 महीने में जब उसका crop cycle ready होगा, उस दिन the farmer does not have to make that all difficult decision कि अब open market में price इतनी मिल रही है लेकिन मैंने forward contract इतने का sign किया हुआ है. Then he must have that flexibility in that forward contract that he can actually go and get the open market pricing, and then pay back to this medium, and the medium also pays back to the bank. So at least in the cases of digitization, this conversion of analog to digital is very important for banks to come into this ecosystem, and something that we've been working with a few of those providers.
ठीक. अच्छा, ये एक मेरा आप लोगों से क्वेश्चन होगा सबसे कि आपके ख्याल में क्या मोस्ट इम्पॉर्टेंट सर्विसेज एंड प्रोडक्ट्स हैं, और उन सर्विसेज और प्रोडक्ट्स को फार्मर तक, स्मॉल होल्डर फार्मर तक ले जाने के लिए क्या इकोसिस्टम होना चाहिए, क्या उसके कौन से प्लेयर, ख़ास तौर पे प्राइवेट सेक्टर और गवर्नमेंट सेक्टर का क्या रोल हो सकता है उस इकोसिस्टम को डेवलप करने का? Would like to take the first crack.
I would like to take the question. Basically, you're right. Number one, Agritech के अंदर या हमारे एग्रीकल्चर के अंदर अगर आप देखें, ठीक है, it's 24% of our GDP. जितने स्टार्टअप्स आ रहे हैं, कंपनीज आ रही हैं एग्रीटेक के अंदर, बी इट लेंडिंग, बी इट एनी सर्विस, बी इट प्लेटफॉर्म सर्विस, बी इट एनी फिनटेक सॉर्ट ऑफ सर्विसेज, बी इट बाइंग सेलिंग मार्केट प्लेस, दिस मार्केट इज ह्यूमंगस. जितनी कंपनीज आती जा रही हैं उतना स्पेस बढ़ता जा रहा है, और स्टिल देयर इज अ वैक्यूम जिसको फिल करना पड़ेगा. एक तो सबसे पहला चैलेंज ये. सो नंबर वन इज कोलैबोरेशन. ऑल ऑफ देम नीड टू कोलैबोरेट. सो देयर इज नो फाइटिंग, देयर इज नो कंपटीशन देयर. We collaborate.
You feel that it is already a complex system, right? To go and talk to a farmer, और उसमें अगर multiple stakeholder होंगे वो एक बेहतर तरीका कार है, या एक प्लेटफॉर्म, एक कंपनी हो जो ये सारी सर्विसेज प्रोवाइड कर रही हो? Let's say सैटेलाइट इमेजरी और ड्रोन टेक्नोलॉजी यूज़ कर रही हो और उसको बता रही हो कि किस वक्त तुमने पानी देना है, और साथ उसके फर्टिलाइज़र के लिए उसको पैसे भी दे. Is one company delivering all the services, in your opinion, is better than collaboration, सब partnership हो सबके दरमियान?
देखिए जी, मेरा ख्याल है पार्टनरशिप्स होनी चाहिए. वन कंपनी कैन नॉट गो डीप डाउन एंड डू एवरीथिंग. ड्रोन इज अ स्पेशलाइज्ड थिंग, इंफॉर्मेशन डिसेमिनेशन स्पेशलाइज्ड, फिनटेक स्पेशलाइज्ड, और सब हट के. तो जो इसके एक्सपर्ट्स हैं वो अपना काम करें और एक कोलैबोरेट कर जाए ना.
सारे पैनलिस्ट एग्री करते हैं, आप एग्री करते हैं?
जी बिल्कुल, 100%. देखिए, and there could be multiple platforms, but each platform should endeavor to bring in the value chain partners, so that platform can deliver the complete suite of services. उस platform पे we need people who have access to the smallholder farmers. उस प्लेटफॉर्म पे
okay, and then funding भी आए और सारी चीज़ें.
Right.
आप भी.
I just like to add over here कि ज़ाहिर है कि अगर इस तरह का कोई हम सिंगुलर प्लेटफॉर्म डेवलप कर लें तो उसमें मोनोपोली का एलिमेंट बहुत ज़्यादा आ जाएगा. फॉर एग्जांपल, अभी दैट्स समथिंग वी ऑलवेज से कि पाकिस्तान में एजुकेशन सिस्टम को आप देखें कि प्राइवेट सेक्टर्स ने एग्जिस्टिंग सिस्टम को बेहतर नहीं बनाया बल्कि अपनी अलग से एक डोमेन बना लिया एंड यू हैव सीन रिसेंटली कि किस तरह वो डिस्ट्रप्टिव हो गया एंड दे हैव मोनोपोली नाउ एंड यू नो सो आई थिंक दिस शुड नॉट हैपन इन एग्रीकल्चर वी शुड नॉट क्रिएट पैरेलल सिस्टम अ सिस्टम दैट इज you know that replaces the current system. Rather we should make the current system better, उसमें improvements लेके आएं, उससे learnings करें और जो है alternatives provide करें. That's something very important. I think that's empowerment का element ही तभी आता है जब आप alternative systems provide करते हैं.
तो मेरे panelist का ख्याल ये है कि coalition बेहतर है. हाँ? Okay.
Absolutely जी, coalition is the new key.
कोई questions अगर और एक आध question ले लेते हैं.
Assalamualaikum जी, I'm representing Salam Thaqafil here. आप लोगों ने collaboration की बात की, एक छोटा सा concern में जो हमें भी at times face करना पड़ता है. So you as a company, how comfortable you are in terms of sharing information with your strategic alliances, right? And in return, what commodity or what payment do you expect in return कि यार वो strategic alliance अगर हम information share कर रहे हैं तो उनसे हमें क्या चाहिए in return?
I would like to take it. अच्छा, basically जी data जितना आता जाए ना, data refine ही होता जाता है. So both the companies should have this understanding कि अगर दोनों data share कर रहे हैं वो data improve होता रहे. वो data जितना improve होगा ना वो update होता रहेगा क्योंकि data collecting data, updating data is very costly thing. So you collaborate, you do it very easily. और उसमें accuracy बहुत बढ़ जाती है. So that's one thing which I believe जो equally होना चाहिए. Considering you guys are insurance companies and you guys are totally dependent on the data which you guys collect from, let's say, from resellers. For example, I am a reseller for insurance. So वो जितना data accuracy club हो रहा होगा, accurately update हो रहा होगा और share हो रहा होगा further forward and backwards. So मेरा ख्याल है वो एक बहुत अच्छा preposition है towards और वो growth वो बहुत सी चीज़ों के अंदर वो बहुत enablement ला सकता है. Sir.
Assalamu alaikum ji. मेरा नाम ताबिश है जी. I head the digital services at Syngenta. Thank you very much. एक तो great session, very useful. Quick comment, एक तो ये कि I think बहुत ज़्यादा because this is the Pakistan FinTech network, तो a lot of questions, a lot of information that has flown today is more about lending and how to lend to the farmers. ज़्यादा वो question. So very happy to see this session. I think फवाद साहब ने शुरू में ही climate की बात कर दी. मैं पहले वो question पूछना चाहता था. So I think जो आपने बात की information asymmetry, I think सबसे ज़्यादा जो हमने notice किया वो climate और weather के around at least notice किए in the past. अब सिर्फ एक चीज़ क्योंकि सामने information asymmetry के लोग बैठे हैं और मैं बहुत सारे startup से बात करता हूँ. एक तो है कि farmer तक finances flow कराना ना, but interestingly ये बहुत सारे startups इस चीज़ में भी बहुत ज़्यादा struggle करते हैं कि how does the money flow from the farmer to the startup. बहुत सारी services B2C based हैं और अक्सर 1 रुपये पर डे की सब्सक्रिप्शन होती है, 5 रुपये पर डे की. साथ बैठे हैं, फवाद साहब बैठे हैं. आई थिंक अ लॉट ऑफ फिनटेक्स रियली नीड टू फोकस ऑन दिस साइड कि फार्मर से किस तरह हम बहुत सारी फिनटेक्स हैं, इजी पैसा है, जैज़ कैश है, इस टाइप की सब्सक्रिप्शंस हैं.
जी, क्वेश्चन प्लीज जरा क्विकली कर
तो जस्ट सेइंग कि if the panel could share their views on what they think कि किस तरह फार्मर से फ्लो ऑफ मनी आ सकता है towards them for the fintech association to be helpful. Thank you.
जी बताएं.
maybe I'll take.
फार्मर से आप कह रहे हैं कि फिनटेक एसोसिएशन को कैसे
पैसे. So how do the Agritechs make money from the farmers? I think
okay,
that's
so
the question.
ठीक है. Okay.
So I think that this is where Agritechs need to work with fintechs to have a variety of channels available. जैसे information dissemination के लिए we use a variety of channels. We need multiplicity of channels to collect money from the farmers as well. So this is my point of view. We are trying, just the beyond, go beyond the pure subscription model to collect money in other ways by providing premium services to farmers. So let's see how it works. you may have some other views and,
नहीं जी, absolutely you're right. I'll completely agree with फवाद साहब कि एक तो ये बहुत बड़ा चैलेंज है कि फार्मर्स तो हम सर्विसेज पहुंचाते हैं, जैसे मैंने पहले कहा, ये इन्फॉर्मेशन को बनाना, क्लब करना और डिसेमिनेट करना इज अ वेरी कॉस्टली प्रोपोजिशन. ठीक है, वी गेट मीडियम्स लाइक SMS, IVRs, OBDs जो थोड़े से कंपैरेटिवली सस्ते पड़ते हैं, बट इवेंचुअली वो सस्ते व्हेन यू गो टुवर्ड, लेट्स से अगर मुझे दिन में 3 मिलियन लोगों को कैंपेन करनी होती है, तो द नंबर इज ऑल्सो इन मिलियंस पर डे, और मुझे वो हार्डली शायद ₹1 भी नहीं दे रहा, वो दिन का ₹1 नहीं दे रहा, हफ्ते का ₹5 नहीं दे रहा. दैट्स अ चैलेंज फॉर अस. So yes, fintechs can help us a lot in terms of कि हम उस revenue को हम generate कर सकें in terms of further improving the services. So there is a way, and fintechs can collaborate with Agritech. Considering this event is itself a great example. If fintech or Agritech club करके, तो I'm sure we can have great opportunities.
Yeah. Would you like to contribute? I mean, have any views on this question?
Yeah, my only, I mean, in addition to what has already been shared, I think one thing we must remember is we would have to, so the medium koi bhi ho sakta hai of collection, but we must align our repayment with the crop cycle, with the cash flow cycle of that farmer. So I think in between he may have small amounts of money which he can use either to pay through his airtime or through some other mediums, but he would not have any significant amount of money available until his crop is ready. So we've got to, it's a patient game, so we've got to be ready to get the monies when his crop is ready.
Okay, thank you. I'll take a couple of minutes to just wrap up the session. So,
excuse me, the one question. I'm Syed on Mehdi. I've been sent by.
Yeah, we don't have time. Sorry. आप बाद में discuss कर लीजिएगा, please.
Okay.
2 minutes हैं हमारे पास सब. So, I think